the everyday Hogwarts player. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Tartarus. The news that a squib could become a wizard by becoming a werewolf and learning Fenrir's transformation was actually first told to him by Filch's father, who he thought would never contact him until his death. His father said that magic, even he, wanted to become a werewolf to learn it. And in his opinion, the Harry Potter in front of him was probably because of this. After all, even his father, the head of the royal family, one of the 28 holy clans, couldn't help but be willing to temporarily become a werewolf, who in his eyes was even inferior to a squib. Just when Filch was thinking of letting the already extraordinary Harry Potter learn Fenrir Avatar first and then let Harry Potter teach him as a condition, Harry spoke. "No, this has nothing to do with the Fenrir Avatar. This has something to do with Rawl," Harry said bluntly. I was just a squib before." Filch's face was immediately filled with an expression of pride mixed with shame. He didn't expect that Harry Potter thought so highly of him and thought he knew Rawl's secret. But on the other hand, he was deeply hurt by his identity as a squib. "I just want to know about Azkaban. You should know," Filch went on before Harry could finish his sentence. On 1720th June 6th, the great minister Damocles Raoul decided to use Azkaban as a wizarding prison, with Dementors as guards, said Filch. Harry could see that Filch was doing this completely unconsciously. Filch seemed to have this engraved in his DNA, and he spoke it so fluently and in one breath. So why do the Rawls attach so much importance to this policy? Why did the Rawls react so violently and even risk cursing him when Eldritch Diggory, as Minister of Magic, decided to move the wizard prison to a different location? Harry asked immediately. Filch's behavior just now undoubtedly made Harry feel certain about the possibility that Filch knew the secret behind Azkaban. "I don't know, but I only know one thing. Every Rawl, as long as he is a wizard, no matter how bad his grades at Hogwarts are, they are all very good at a kind of black magic that is unique to Rawl. I think this has something to do with Azkaban. When I was a child, my father told me that as long as Azkaban is still the British wizard prison and everyone still believes so, it doesn't matter if there are no prisoners in it." The muscles on Filch's face relaxed, and the memories of his childhood made him look full of happiness. This was the expression Harry would make when he occasionally saw Filch and Mrs. Norris alone together from the window of his bedroom at night because his eyesight had improved. "What's that magic called?" Harry asked eagerly. He felt he was closer than ever to the answer. "I don't know. I'm just a squib. However, by next weekend, which will be March, I can get the Wolfsbane potion and, under the guidance of the Ministry of Magic, become a real wizard in the middle of the month, when the moon is full." Filch, who was interrupted from his childhood memories, was surprisingly not. It seems that the joy of becoming a wizard has changed him. On Monday, after the afternoon charms class, Harry and Ron, who had agreed to meet in the spare room at the end of the corridor on the 5th floor, were pacing in circles inside, waiting for angry Draco. I don't know how long it took. The blue sky outside the window turned dim, and Draco appeared with the sound of a heavy door closing. Harry looked at Ron's clean right hand and thought for no reason. So he had been killing time with random thoughts spread. "I finally understand how you feel, Harry." Draco apologized with his hands clasped together. He had previously been famous for being mistakenly believed to be having an affair with Harry Potter, and he thought the same would happen this time. He could not have imagined that the wedding banquet had been prolonged because of those pure-blooded squibs, and now the news of his engagement was known to the entire wizarding world. Not to mention Hogwarts, most of the pure-blood students were already participants. "Did you find out? What about Rawls and the secret of Azkaban?" Harry asked after coming back to his senses. "Of course, I know. You mentioned to me at noon that you had learned from Filch that the use of Azkaban as a wizard prison was related to the Rawls' unique talent for the dark arts. You may not know much about the dark magic, but we know it very well, or rather, the Malfoy family knows it very well. You all know the cause of my grandfather's death." Draco sighed. "Dragonpox. Could it be that?" said Ron and Harry separately. "That's the one. Died from Rawls' curse. In the days of Septimus Malfoy, my grandfather's father, he used the Minister of Magic as his puppet. It is regarded as the most glorious era for us Malfoys. At this time, my grandfather was cursed by Raoul. Although Voldemort killed Raoul, who cast the curse, and used various rituals to save his life, he eventually died of dragonpox in his later years. At my engagement party, I took advantage of the alcohol and Dumbledore's reputation to learn the true principle of the magic from a certain Raoul. It is a very peculiar kind of magic. It has no specific framework. It is more like an amplifier, amplifying the power of the caster's evil spells, curses, and even black magic. It's called Tartarus, the name of the prison in ancient Greek mythology where Zeus imprisoned the Titans. Its creator is Damocles Raoul. He borrowed the concept of Azkaban as a wizard prison and included the resentment of those who died unjustly. He built an illusory prison in the body as an amplifier of negative magic. And just recently, the source of Tartarus that the Raoul's perceived disappeared. This is impossible in their opinion, because Dementors cannot be destroyed, and Azkaban is still a wizard prison in the minds of today's wizards. Draco frowned. Chapter 427 Twinks finds Draco. The grudges and Dementors are gone. Azkaban is no longer a prison anyway. Harry's pupils dilated slightly when he heard Draco's words. Dementors cannot be killed and can only be expelled by the Patronus charm. They are a kind of aggregate of negative emotions that cannot be considered as life, non-existence. They are magical fungus-like phenomena born from human emotions. The only way for Dementors to disappear is if they don't cause long, uninterrupted death in dark, dirty places. But even if it was the breeding ground for Dementors, the resentment had been turned into firewood by Voldemort using some unknown magic, those Dementors would not disappear so quickly. You have to know that the Dementors, which were created in the 15th century because the evil wizard Axtus tortured and killed the Muggles he captured, still existed in the 17th century when Damocles Raoul was elected Minister for Magic. Moreover, the magical framework of Tartarus is derived from the concept of Azkaban as a wizard prison, and the Raoul's, as the descendants who contributed to the birth of this prison, can borrow it. Even if the Dementors and the Malice are gone, the framework should still be there. But in Draco's words, while the wizards in the British wizarding world still believe that Azkaban was a wizard prison, the framework disappeared. You know, even destroying the entire island wouldn't be enough to do this. Harry could never imagine how Voldemort had done this. Voldemort must have obtained the secret of this magic from Raoul's. That Voldemort is coming back to life and he is in Azkaban now. He might not have been able to master the entire magic of Tartarus before, because he was not Raoul. But now, because he has no body, he uses Dementors, grudges or something else as a body. The disappearance of the island of Azkaban may be because it has become a part of Voldemort. That makes sense, said suddenly. How can that be possible? That's an island, Ron and Draco said separately. I wouldn't have thought of that. But isn't Hagrid the perfect example right now? You may not feel it, but from my perspective, Hagrid is the Forbidden Forest. Harry took a few steps forward excitedly. So how is this a good development? Just expecting Voldemort to be resurrected. You may not know this, but only a resurrected Voldemort can be truly killed, Harry said as he drew out his wand and waved it. There was an immediate silence around them, the sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the faint sounds of fighting in the distance all disappeared. Is this true? Draco looked at Harry, who was using magic to prevent their voices from leaking out. Ron's eyes widened as well, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Yes, Voldemort used an evil magic to transform himself into a state worse than a wandering spirit and forced himself to stay in the world. As long as he doesn't resurrect, no matter how thousands of times he has passed, even or hundreds of years, Voldemort has the possibility of resurrecting again. That we have the advantage now. Will the resurrected Voldemort be very strong this time? But what about us? Dumbledore, Hagrid, young Voldemort, and the Ministry of Magic, which is more united than ever before, and controls the Daily Prophet, the mouthpiece of the British wizarding world, Harry explained. This is an open conspiracy. Voldemort must have known it, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't help but activate this ritual that would make him more powerful after his resurrection. Draco continued. He was convinced, and he also thought that Harry's guess should be correct. For the better means that Voldemort has been resurrected. Well, Draco, didn't you say there was one more thing? I hope this is a good thing. Hogwarts might all be gone forever. How about I change the time? Draco noticed that something was wrong with Ron. And even Harry was acting a little strange. You better tell me. Harry sighed. It is obvious that Voldemort's resurrection is about to conflict with his and Ryan's agreement to get the Resurrection Stone next year now. Even the worst news could not move him. You all know this, I've said it before. For example, my mother's sister, Tonks, the daughter of Aunt Andromeda who was expelled from the Black family tree, attended the party. She found me on Sunday. At the end of the party, Draco sighed. Does Tonks' family object to him and Lupin being together? It shouldn't be. Tonks' mother found a muggle wizard for love. So what if Lupin is a werewolf? And isn't Lupin's lycanthropy cured now? Again, so much so that Tonks even found me. She hopes to meet Lupin through me. Draco's tone gradually became a little. Obviously, this is directed at Lupin. But he just promised my sister on Saturday to get along well with Tonks. Ron was puzzled. Maybe Lupin is busy lately. After all, he has just learned the Fenrir angry incarnation. That his idea was wrong. Chapter 428 Herbal Medicine Class. Harry never expected that his intuition was right. For the next period of time, even Lupin began to avoid them. He seemed to know that Tonks had asked Harry and the others for help. At the Ravenclaw vs. Gryffindor match on Saturday, Lupin, who always took time to attend, was nowhere to be seen. They thought about following him, but Lupin, who had transformed into Fenrir, was much more mobile than they had imagined. Even Harry couldn't catch up with him. Often, you would see his back 1 second and he would disappear the next. After all, Harry's body transformation magic focuses mainly on strengthening lifespan and tapping into the magic power of the heart. Fred and George, who were caught many times after Filch disappeared for half a month, also had a deep understanding of this. Filch's mobility and his familiarity with the secret passages of Hogwarts made him the nightmare of all students who broke the school rules at Hogwarts. They also tried to write to Sirius, but obviously, Sirius was on Lupin's side. You are still too young. Lupin's decision is correct, Sirius replied in the letter. They were all bastards. What do they think of girls' feelings? Ginny and Lavender, who had become close friends without realizing it, said hand in hand. They glared at Harry and Ron as if they had done it. I can actually understand Lupin. Promise at this time, Ron said privately when Ginny and Lavender were away. But Ginny still found out about this from somewhere. Harry's innocent face. What about her mother? The herbology class, Professor Sprout assigned to prune Abyssinian figs. Harry was carrying some dead branches and placing them on top of the compost heap when he came face to face with Draco. Have you seen Lupin Draco lately? Lupin has been busy with this matter recently. However, for some reason, Tonks, as an Auror, got in touch with Mad-Eye Moody, an Auror who had retired many years ago and was also a member of the Order of the Phoenix. In her last letter, she seemed to have known something. Recently, he hadn't received a letter from Twinks for a week. You know, before this, he received it almost every day. Harry shook his head. Draco came over and started working on the same fig tree as Harry and Ron. Perhaps we shouldn't have been involved in this matter from the beginning, Harry said as he broke off a dead branch. Perhaps Tonks felt that we were unreliable and wanted to join the Order of the Phoenix through Moody. After all, she is an Auror with a clean family background. Ron accidentally pulled off an Abyssinian shrunken fig. I say, is this edible? Ron looked cautiously in the direction of Professor Sprout. He didn't want to be deducted points. This kind-looking woman was not so kind when facing her lovely plants. The shrink fig is a magical plant, the best specimens of which grow in Abyssinia. The shrunken fig grows inside the fruit and is the same purple color as the fruit. It is a deciduous plant that loses its leaves in the autumn, leaving only bare branches in the winter. However, due to its strong root system, the plant can survive even snowy days. Its leaves have medicinal properties. After peeling the fig fruit, it produces a purple liquid that can be used to make potions such as shrinking potions. Harry poked Ron with a dead branch. I'm asking if it's edible. Ron lowered his voice. He didn't want to be discovered. Because some Hufflepuff students like to pick plants for midnight snacks, Professor Sprout always uses an unknown magic to check on them. No matter how deep you hide the fruits or flowers, she can always find them. If you accidentally pull off the fruit and throw it in the corner, you will be deducted points when you eat the herbal medicine class many days later when you think everything is safe. And eating them is said to be the only way to avoid being discovered. Dudley had done just that, and he had once got away with swallowing a jumping toadstool raw. You still don't like potions class? Draco pouted, and herbology class, this year we learned a total of 4 plant poison tentacles in our herbal medicine class, mentioned mandrake, jumping toadstool, An Abyssinian shrinking fig. If you pay attention, Professor Sprout always reminds you which plants are not to be eaten, just like the jumping toadstool, which is one of the main ingredients of the BAFE brain-stimulating potion. The Abyssinian shrinking fig, which is one of the only ingredients of the shrinking potion, can also be eaten. It tastes pretty good, Harry shrugged. Phew. This tastes good. Ron, who was about to swallow it directly but chewed it a little because of Harry's words, looked bitter. The taste of dried figs is lovely, but the taste of the juice, I dare say, you'll regret tasting it. Draco smiled. Ron's foolishness certainly helped him get out of the anxiety of not receiving Twink's letter. Wait, Harry, what did you say? Why didn't you remind me earlier? Ron looked depressed. Remind you of what? Even Harry sometimes still didn't understand Ron's train of thought. Shrinkage potion can shrink the drinker or transform him into a younger form. Witches often drink it at the risk of shrinking, hoping to grow younger. BAFE Brain Refresher, a drug that can make people smarter for a period of time after drinking it, and even after the effect of the drug wears off, the brain's thinking will be slightly enhanced. Why didn't you remind me that the plants we learned in the herbology class this year were so crucial? These are all gold galleons. Ron's face was full of bitterness and regret. Draco and Harry looked at each other, neither of them knew what to say. Chapter 429 Neville becomes strong. After a long silence, Harry finally said, Ron, do you know in which school year we came into contact with a shrinking potion? Looking at Ron, who was rubbing the back of his head and grinning, he continued, 3rd year. It means something, it's simple to grasp. Listen to the steps. 1. Process the daisy roots and chop them into equal sizes. Caterpillar. 4. Add 5 caterpillar slices to the crucible and heat the crucible until the potion turns red. 5. Add peeled shrunken figs until the potion turns yellow. 6. Heat the potion until it turns purple. 7. Add a small piece of mouse spleen to the crucible. 8. Add chopped daisy roots until the potion turns green, then add 5 drops of leech juice. 9. Add more crinkly figs, this time until it turns pink. 10. Add a chopped caterpillar. Add hemlock essence. Heat until it turns green. It's pretty simple, right? I won't go into the details of how many times to stir it and when to stir it. Ron, you want to make money from the shrinking potion? It's impossible to earn money from those old people. Because it's too simple, and this potion only works when it's boiling. Once it cools down, it loses its effectiveness and needs to be boiled again to be useful. And its effects are divided into 2 types, depending entirely on luck. If you're lucky, you'll become younger, but if you're unlucky, you'll become the size of a thumb. Plus, it lasts a long time, unless you apply a shrinking potion to cancel the effect. Obviously, it's dangerous. The famous pharmacist who invented it, Zygmunt Page, once gave the Tertius brothers a shrinking potion, and they both shrunk to the size of beetles and hide under a cupboard for days to avoid being dug out and eaten by their cat. Putting all this together, you understand that the profit from selling it is not as high as you think. Harry stretched out his right index finger and swung it left and right to indicate that it was unreliable. Isn't this a good solution? My Aunt Muriel used to do this. Before taking the shrinking potion, she would stand on a low chair with a small basin of anti-shrinking potion under the chair. If she became smaller, she would jump into it. If she hadn't taken to raising cats later, I would probably have continued to see the young and beautiful Aunt Muriel. Ron said, his eyes becoming blurry, as if he was fantasizing about something. That's why you keep a picture of Aunt Muriel under your pillow, Draco said sarcastically. Shut up. Apply your fertilizer, said Ron, throwing the fertilizer to Draco. Draco threw the bag of fertilizer into the trash can in the corner, and the trash can swallowed the bag and burped loudly. Ron looked at Harry again, looking at him with hope. What about the Buffy brain stimulant? You might as well buy a bag of dragon claw powder. After eating this, it can improve your memory and make your brain become extra sharp within a few hours. And the BAFE brain stimulant is just as effective as this, and it can also permanently improve your brain's thinking a little bit. But it's too difficult. And it's hard to configure. It's not even taught at Hogwarts, because once it is prepared incorrectly, the potion will be harmful to the brain. The most important thing is that unlike other potions, you can't tell whether it is successful or not by its color or smell. Harry shook his head. But you're different, Harry. How could you fail? Toadstools are easy to get, too, Ron said to Harry in an almost flattering tone. Draco on the side pretended to vomit. I'll tell you the recipe, Runespore eggs, dragon's clock powder, jumping mushrooms, and frog's brains. Instead of preparing it, I might as well eat the dragon's clock powder directly. And it also consumes Runespore eggs, which are also expensive. It's a thankless job. A big seller on the market, Harry said to Ron earnestly. Merlin's beard. Why is it so hard for me to get rich? Ron said this simply because the market for his smoke bottles has become saturated. Although the monthly profit was stable at around 100 gold galleons, it was still not enough for Ron, who even used dragon skin to make magic tape. This made Draco, who prided himself on being extravagant, couldn't help but give Ron a cold look. Just as Harry and the others were talking, Neville walked past them carrying a jar of Abyssinian shrunken figs and walked towards Professor Sprout with great ease. When did Neville become so strong? Ron couldn't help rubbing his eyes. Only then did he realize that Neville's round face was gradually showing some contours, and his round belly had become flat. Why didn't I notice it? Harry was so startled that he dropped the dead branch in his hand to the ground. She completely forgot that she used to get up at 6 o'clock every day to take the digestion potion, and spent her spare time accompanying Ginny and looking for Lupin. In early spring, thick clothes under the robe will make the changes in body shape less obvious. Could Neville have learned Fenrir's transformation by contracting lycanthropy? Draco speculated. Some students in Slytherin had taken half a month off to practice this magic. This magic has a particularly significant effect on the physical improvement of wizards. That's impossible. Neville didn't ask for leave. Ron shook his head. For some reason Neville has become unsociable recently and is often nowhere to be found. But Ron, his roommate, knew his whereabouts. What are you looking at? Anthony, who had just become interested in what Harry and the others were discussing, walked forward. Look at Neville again. He's gotten a lot stronger. Harry said bluntly. He thought he saw traces of Dudley in Neville. Neville, like Dudley, suddenly became like this from being fat. You don't know. Anthony looked surprised. He's been training lately. Michael popped up. He got hold of an unopened iron sword from nowhere and practiced outside the castle all day. Most of the time, he would sit on the grass in a strange posture, with his sword on his legs and his eyes closed, and no one knew what he was doing. Maybe he's read too many night novels, Terry complained. His favorite thing on weekdays was astronomy. After asking his astronomy teacher Aurora Sinistra for permission, he was attracted by Neville in a corner of the bushes in the castle during his free time after observing astronomy through a telescope. I said Neville has lost weight, do you want to? Anthony looked at Ron and teased. As a loyal fan of Harry, Anthony has always wanted to replace Ron's position beside Harry. At this moment, Ron's figure, which had gained some weight because he had made money recently and often bought snacks in addition to meals, became the focus of his ridicule. After all, Harry has become much stronger recently, and he also started exercising and gained some muscles. Anthony, who thinks he has more topics to talk about with Harry at this moment, thinks so. Thanks to Popokaiakia for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription. Chapter 430 Death Eaters lost their wands. What are you looking at? A voice that shouldn't be in this country's magic school suddenly sounded. It was Kate. She was wearing a white wizard robe and holding a cherry wood wand. She was sitting cross-legged on the sofa, looking at Ryan, who was staring at the stone wall not far away, not knowing where he was looking. Hell, is this also Japanese? Kate blinked her big eyes. Why? Are you speaking Japanese all of a sudden? When? Did you learn this? Ryan was shocked. When? You asked me to call you Ryan Sensen, aren't you still playing Japanese songs? I still remember I saw you when the fateful revolution ended, Kate said, straightened her upper body and started singing. Wait a minute, your clothes, the wizard robes of the Japanese Magic Institute, and your cherry wood wand, you should know the meaning of white robes in the Japanese wizarding world, right? Ryan stroked his forehead, speechless. All wizards in Japan come from the Magic House, which also has the smallest number of students among the 11 internationally recognized magic schools. It is like a palace, located at the highest point of Minami Iwo Jima, a volcanic island in Japan. It is built entirely of mud and jade and looks like a fat, gorgeous and exquisite pagoda. It is different from other magical schools in that it accepts students as young as 7, but they do not start boarding until they are 11. During day school hours, wizarding children will ride on the back of a giant petrol and from home every day. The wizards here all wear magical robes that change size as the student ages and change color as the wearer becomes more knowledgeable. It starts out pink and turns to gold only when you get the best grades in all subjects. White means that the wizard has betrayed the Japanese wizarding code, committed illegal acts, or violated the international statute of secrecy, Kate said. Why are you saying so much? Also, since you understand that white represents criminals, Ryan was about to continue, but saw Kate biting her finger lightly. Don't you like it? I'll punish this criminal, prosecutor. An hour later, Ryan sat upright and looked at Kate, who was sitting on the sofa that had obviously been cleaned by magic and was now wearing her original clothes. You haven't told me why you wanted to introduce the Institute of Magic just now. Don't you like Vagator the most? Ryan coughed a few times and started talking about serious topics. I wouldn't know you if I didn't say so much first. You will definitely play the teacher-student game again and ask me questions. I still think the ones about the prisoners and prosecutors are more interesting. Kate licked her lips. Is writing to recommend suitable books to her aunt. After all, you know, the teaching materials we learn are not very useful outside the magical environment of Hogwarts. Kate saw that Ryan was already in sage mode and was not going to play anymore, so she answered normally. Yet, it's really strange, how can a squib become a wizard? Ryan said pretentiously. Don't think I don't know. Go to hell. Kate turned into a black shadow and pounced over. Finally, the topic of what he was watching was not explored further. Otherwise, Kate would have noticed the gift Hermione received through Neville's changes. Kate, who is not in mind games all day, is just so troublesome. Because not long ago, the discovery that a squib can become a wizard through Fenrir's transformation made Penelope's aunt. Penelope stopped playing wizard games all day and began to focus on her aunt, who had no idea about magic. Her aunt was said to be very kind to her when she was a child. And Kate naturally returned to reality. That's why he's been so quiet lately. However, this is also related to the recording of Death Eaters, Wilderness Survival, Deadly. And Ryan also has to occasionally make macro control to make the show more interesting. In the previous episodes, all the Death Eaters happened to forget to use magic to preserve the food stored in this prison. With all the food rotting and spoiling, they had no choice but to catch fish. In the latest episode, Bella, the only heroine in the series, accidentally slipped off the reef while fishing because she was not allowed to use magic casually, and broke the last one that Voldemort brought to Azkaban. This meant that in the days that followed, they would have to make fishing tools by hand instead of relying on the magic opportunity once a day to conjure up various props. And under Ryan's plan, in the next episode, Little Mole Cyber, who hates muggles the most, will find a book from the Muggle world, 100 Questions on Desert Island Survival, in a corner of the former Azkaban castle. What will he choose? Please see the next episode for details. Kate, what do you think will happen to Little Mole Cyber? 1. Like he always does, burning all the creations of the Muggle world. I answer, it will be wrong. If I choose 1, then no one else is around him, and there is a fireplace in the prison, so the book will be burned. If I choose the second option, then the most realistic scenario is that Traverse, a pervert who just likes to kill people for fun, will suddenly come to him for reasons such as going to the toilet and stop him. Kate rolled her eyes. How could she be fooled again after having been fooled before? Last time, it was about that guy accidentally breaking his wand. She chose Old Mole Cyber, who often fell when walking. But the result is that, because of the miserable reality, Bella, a skilled fisherman, has grown muscular. This is obviously Ryan's doing. It was supposed to be the Mulcibers and Traverse who used the ones that day. Chapter 431. Harry and Neville reveal themselves to each other. Just when Kate and Ryan were making a fuss about Ryan's little behavior, the cause of the incident, and Neville, who Harry Potter and the others had mentioned before, started his daily training in the corner of the castle. The cold wind of the midsummer night kept blowing on Neville's body, but he was unaware of it. His thin robe seemed to isolate him from all external disturbances. He was sitting cross-legged on the grass, with white silk threads faintly visible, and a huge sword without an edge was lying flat on his knees. The billowing worms, about a foot long and blue in color with a bright jade-like luster, seemed to be attracted as well, transforming into blue light and shadows around him, but they did not dare to approach. But Neville's thoughts at this moment were all concentrated in his own consciousness. It was a strange-shaped sword, indigo blue in color, with unknown words flowing on it like clouds reflected on the water. But Neville now knows that this is called Cloud Seal, a magical writing similar to runes from the mysterious ancient Eastern country. In the eyes of the Muggles in that country, Cloud seals are characters that were naturally formed from the clouds in the sky. The gods in the sky and wizards called their mortals copied them and then passed them down to the human world again, and at the same time regarding it as himself, forgetting his real shape. To do this, Neville bought a magic box from Australia, a prop specially made for billywig worm enthusiasts, similar to the box of Newt, the most famous magical biologist today. It contains a stable housing for a colony of billywig worms. When Neville bought it, it came with a group of billywig worms into higher level thinking due to the vibration of their wings. In this way, he can get into the state more easily and truly practice the magic given by Ryan estimated that it would take him a long time to practice before he could get started. However, this shortcut also has disadvantages. That is, if he cannot remain still, the started billywig worms will use the long, thin stinger at the bottom of their bodies. Too many stings can cause uncontrolled floating for days. If an allergic reaction occurs, it may also result in permanent levitation. However, in order to master this magic, the above risks are worth it. He was also a little puzzled as to why this magic, in Hermione's hands, could only produce a sword that could not be transformed by transfiguration. This is completely different from the effect of his current combination of transforming his body and tempering his will. I have also consulted Hermione on this point. Hermione said that maybe it was because this magic was just right for him that it had such an effect. Such examples abound in the history of magic. But recently, I've discovered that when these billywig bugs sting me, I no longer feel dizzy, and I can even float. And, not only that, in the charms class, when facing spells other than those cast by Harry and Professor Flitwick, I had the feeling that even if I stretched out my hand, I would not be hurt or affected by the spell. These thoughts flashed through Neville's mind as he sketched the sword in his mind. Little did he know that this was all due to the nature of his magic. It can be said to be the magic power of the power to break the devil. While imagining himself as a sword, he constantly sketched the actions of the sword in his mind, which also allowed his magic power to flow around his body and transform it. In other words, his magic resistance has increased. Ordinary magic has no effect on him at all. Constant existence. He could also spend extra magic power to use the invisible magic destroying sword to cut off some more powerful spells that exceeded the magic resistance of the Navi. This means that even if it was a killing curse, he would still be able to take it. However, Neville in front of him didn't know all this. He mistakenly believed that the changes in his body were caused by this magic. He also didn't know that this magic would lead him to this point. Who is it? Neville suddenly stood up and pointed his sword straight ahead. He patted his pockets, and blue lights and shadows streamed in. I almost didn't notice you. A surprised voice came from in front of Neville. When the figure walked in, Neville realized that it was Harry. Harry looked at the grass beneath Neville, where a strange magic circle had been formed using white cotton threads. This magic circle has the effect of making people ignore you. Hasn't Harry already obtained Professor Sinistra's consent? Now he can go to the astronomy tower to use the telescope every day. Neville put down the giant sword in his hand. Of course. Harry was silent for a moment, then continued, "Is it Ryan?" When he saw the effectiveness of the magic circle and Neville's strange behavior, he immediately thought of Ryan because, so does he. If it weren't for the fact that no one in their bedroom got up at 6 o'clock except him, he would become the subject of idle conversation among his roommates. Just like Neville addition, the phoenix-shaped magic power accumulated in his heart also began to flow through his blood vessels around his body. Just like now, Harry stretched out his right hand, spread it upwards, and a gold and red bird appeared in his palm. Neville also stretched out his right hand, and a strange-shaped sword appeared in his hand, accompanied by a blue, lightning-like beam of magic power. Looking at the strange phenomena in each other's hands, Neville and Harry both smiled heartily at the same time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 in the Tunnel. Sometimes, keeping the same secret can unexpectedly bring two people closer together. And that was the case with Neville and Harry at this moment. The two of them chatted about everything, and from time to time they showed each other the magic in their hands. Harry tentatively cast a simple levitation spell, and Neville stood still with his sword in hand. Neville held Harry's right hand, and Harry unexpectedly found that he needed to expend more magic power than usual to cast spells. After an unknown amount of time, When Harry had told Neville almost everything except Voldemort's secret and the Moon City in Atlantis that were bound by the contract, Neville said, "Harry, you know, I have been training at night whenever I don't have astronomy class. Plus, I was not being watched due to the influence of the magic circle, which allowed me to discover many interesting things. For example, Lupin, our assistant professor of defense against the dark arts, disappears into the Whomping Willow every night. Do you think he knows some Celtic magic that allows him to become one with trees, or is he the long-lost tree shepherd?" Neville looked at the Whomping Willow. The branches of this tree were shaking as if in a strong wind, the branches swaying back and forth. It must be some brainless magical creature like a goblin, who had approached her rashly again. "Thank you, Neville, this information is very useful to me." Harry's face was as dark as water and he took a deep breath. The next day, on the astronomy tower, the venue was bathed in silver moonlight, and there was a slight chill in the air. The Ravenclaw Eagles were all setting up their telescopes, looking at Jupiter and sketching their views on the star charts, but Harry was looking at something else. Whomping Willow. An unknown amount of time had passed, until Ron had finished filling out Harry's star map, when Harry finally saw the fleeting figure in the telescope. So Harry adjusted the telescope slightly and intended to be observing Jupiter like the other students. "You saw it," Ron whispered. Harry acknowledged, and at the same time, a paper crane disappeared into the sky under the cover of night. Eagles walked tiredly up the steep spiral staircase and disappeared into the classroom. Under the cover of night, two figures stealthily broke away from the crowd and walked out of the castle. "Harry!" A figure rushed out of the bushes and hung on the tall and thin figure. The moonlight shone on their cheeks, revealing their messy bird's nest-like and flaming red hair. Red hair appeared. "Harry, Lupin is in the Shrieking Shack tonight." Draco Malfoy, with light blonde hair and pale cheeks, emerged silently from the darkness like a vampire. Obviously, these four people are the influential figures in Hogwarts today, the Three Musketeers of Hogwarts, and Ginny Weasley, the sister of Ron, the leader of the Three Musketeers. "Hey, Ron, could you please stop mentioning that ridiculous title of the Three Musketeers? Musketeers? Also, when were you the leader?" Ginny couldn't help rolling her eyes. "Okay, you all remember how to get into the secret passage under the Whomping Willow. Press this car on the Whomping Willow, and do it quickly," Harry said as he walked. "Let's do it ourselves. We are wizards. We can just use a levitation spell to control the stone and then a shock spell. Ginny can also conjure a bat," Ron said quickly, feeling a chill in the back of his head. In the night, the four of them crossed the dark greenhouse, vegetable garden, and black outside, and finally arrived at their destination today, the Whomping Willow. Just as Ron stretched out his wand and was about to chant the spell, a long sigh flashed by, and Harry approached the thick Whomping Lawn Willow. Sensing the approach of a living creature, the branches of the Whomping Willow struck towards Harry like a storm. Just as Ginny was about to scream, Harry strolled around, dodging the branches one by lowering his head, shrugging his shoulders, bending over, stepping back, and taking a small step to the right. Before Ginny and the others could react, Harry's hand was already on the scar on the thick tree trunk. Suddenly, the tree seemed to turn into marble and stopped moving, and all its leaves were still. "I think we should not waste time." Harry shrugged and looked behind him. "You left me behind again to show off," Ron couldn't help but mutter. He completely forgot that he originally wanted to be lazy and let Harry do it all. Draco and Ginny couldn't help but give Ron a cold look when they heard this, and then walked to the tree trunk. After Ron and the other two crawled into the tunnel, Harry followed them in. Ron and the others were just ahead. "Are we really going in?" Ron began to back off. He was the tallest among the four of them. Harry and the others could bend over and trot forward, but he would probably have to crawled forward helplessly 10 minutes later. "Why don't we go back?" Ron backed out again, but this time, even Harry couldn't help but agree in his heart, because this tunnel is too long. Besides, this tunnel is not meant for people to walk on. Even Lupin, who had mastered the Fenrir incarnation and whose physical fitness had soared, should have passed this tunnel in the form of a wolf. The height of the tunnel and the plum-shaped footprints on the ground that Harry had modified and could vaguely see in the darkness also provided this point. Although his body had been transformed by magic, Harry could not bear the feeling of being in the dark, bending over, with no end in sight. Not to mention Draco and Ginny behind him. Ron, who had been crawling all the time, was probably about to collapse. "Here." Harry turned around and took out a bottle of potion. It was green and slowly turned from calm to boiling. "Shrinkage potion." Ron recognized it immediately. Chapter 433 Lupin is found. When did you become so good at potions? Ginny couldn't help but ask. Wait, Aunt Muriel. Before Ron could answer, Ginny thought of her aunt who she once believed to be a vampire when she was a child. Ron was silent, and Draco and Harry, who knew the inside story, were also speechless. In the long and awkward silence, Ginny and Draco both successfully shrank to the size of a fingernail. Their clothes were also shrunk to the right size by Harry using the shrinking charm in time. Their wands, which would affect the effectiveness of the shrinking charm, had also been given to Harry in advance. Ron, after being turned into a baby 3 times in a row and being laughed at by Harry again and again, finally touched the shrinking potion's function of shrinking his body. Protect from armor. Harry drew his wand and said to Ron and the other two. That way you don't have to worry about being squeezed by the other things in my pocket. Harry shrugged and put Ron and the other two who were standing in his palm into his pocket. This is when the journey to the Shrieking Shack began again. Oops, Draco, your wand poked me in the stomach. Harry, why can't I stay in the other empty pocket with Ginny? Ron couldn't help but complain in his pocket. Sorry, we're going up now and may be there soon, Harry explained to Ron. Ginny is his girlfriend, so Ron and Draco should just squeeze in. Draco understood this very well and remained silent, waiting for the end of the journey. Ginny, who had never been so close to Harry before, was covering her red face and thinking wildly. Ron was about to continue complaining after pushing Draco's wand away, but his words were abruptly cut off. Just when Harry was wondering why Ron was suddenly quiet, Draco's words explained everything. What's going on now? Why is it shaking? My butt is sitting on Ron's face. Hold on a little, the tunnel is suddenly winding now, but there is good news, I saw a little light, maybe we are almost there. Harry had just finished speaking, because of his speed, a messy, dusty house appeared in front of him. The wallpaper had fallen off the walls, there were stains all over the floor, every piece of furniture was broken, as if someone had smashed it, and the windows were boarded up. Silently, Harry quickly drew out his wand and pointed it at himself and the others, confining their voices to a small circle with him as the center. So as to avoid being discovered by Lupin, who has been transformed and has sharp eyes and ears. Here we are. Malfoy, move your ass. Ron's voice came from Harry's left pocket. I wonder if I've come to the wrong place. There's clearly no sign of anyone living here, Harry said, tapping his pockets with his wand, and Draco were struggling, and Ginny covered her face and slowly flew out of her 2 pockets and slowly fell to the ground. He waved his wand again, and a potion bottle in his pocket opened automatically. 3 drops of potion fell on the heads of the 3 people, enveloping them completely. Second, they were back to where they were before taking the shrinking potion. Ron wiped his face in disgust, while Ginny squatted on the spot. Draco looked at the ground, thoughtfully. Maybe we are in the right place, Harry, take a few steps and take a look. Draco suddenly raised his head and said in damage with magic. Look at this chair, it's very stable, and there's not a speck of dust when you touch it. Draco sat on a wooden chair, it seemed to be covered in dust, with a large piece of wood torn off and one of its legs missing. Harry distributed the ones back to the 3 of them. That's good, otherwise I would go crazy. I didn't come all this way just to smell Malfoy's butt. Ron pointed his wand at himself and used it to clean up one after another. Or rather, these traces just make people think that no one lives here. After all, the Shrieking Shack is a famous attraction in Hogsmeade Village. Although her face had returned to normal, her ears were still slightly red and also wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, trending to become with a thick layer of dust. The 4 of them walked on the dusty carpet and reached the dark staircase landing. There were 4 doors in front of them, and the creaking sound came from one of the half-open doors, leaking warm light out. Right there, Harry waved, and they looked through the crack in the door. There was a luxurious 4-poster bed, the only dust-free thing in the whole room, with curtains around the bed blocking the shadows on the bed. But judging by the black fur peeking out from the gaps in the curtain, the person inside was clearly not human, or not yet. Its tail was constantly beating down the bed unpleasantly, and that was the cause of the noise they heard downstairs. Seeing this, Harry's eyes suddenly widened. Lupin in wolf form, his sense of smell. Harry simply opened the door and waved his wand lightly, as if conducting a piece of light music, and the magic that bound the sound was lifted. Ferocious claws became slender and thin. Before everyone could be surprised, a gray-haired man with half his chest appeared exposed on the spot. He had a look of pain on his face and empty eyes. After a long silence, he said in a hoarse voice, "Congratulations on finding me, Harry. I thought this day would take a long time to come." Lupin pulled his hair and smiled unnaturally, which looked like he was making a face. Chapter 434 The Triwizard Tournament. Did you just spot us? When? Ron realized it a little later. Squeaking sound. Draco looked at Lupin with a slightly look that now was not the right time. The color drained from Lupin's face and the temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees. "Voldemort, you're not a werewolf now, don't let me think that my father's friend, a Gryffindor, is a coward." Harry gripped his wand tightly, shaking with anger. "Don't you understand? I am a member of the Order of the Phoenix. I have seen too many colleagues disappear, Marlene McKinnon, Benji Fenwick, Edgar Bones, Caradoc Dearborn, James and Lily. Tonks is Bellatrix Lestrange's niece, so she's considered one of the Blacks. Death Eaters kill the whole family. If she is not with me, then she..." Lupin covered his face in pain. "One of the Blacks, purebloods, are all relatives. My uncles are Gideon Pruitt and Fabian. Pruitt is still dead. He is also one of the 28 Holy Families. Don't say it's because they joined the Order of the Phoenix. Perhaps you don't know, but Tonks has already applied to Mad-Eye Moody to join the Order of the Phoenix." Ron rarely said a few serious words. "I'm going to find that bastard." Moody won't agree. Holding his wand tightly, and his usually gentle eyes were full of fierceness that was ready to kill anyone. "It would bring her safety," Harry said sarcastically. "Yet, what reason do I have to interfere with her? In what capacity?" Lupin collapsed on the bed and threw his wand aside. "The problem is solved. When will Voldemort be resurrected? How long will it take? If it's recent, I'll ask Fred and George to suspend their business plan store." There is no doubt that only Ron could say this at this time without any expression. "I guess so." Lupin smiled weakly at first. Dumbledore estimated that it would take more than a year, shortly after the Triwizard Tournament. Draco was very upset. Before he could say anything seriously, everything was resolved. "Maybe this is why Sirius asked us not to care. When Tonks becomes a member of the Order of the Phoenix, Lupin will be like he is now." Draco had to make a summary statement, saying that he was also here and had contributed to persuading Lupin to come back. "That's good, the business plan can go ahead." Ron breathed a sigh of relief. Ginny covered her eyes, saying that she didn't have this brother. The Triwizard Tournament may not just be a competition. Those members from other schools who have come from far away, as well as those dangerous magical creatures, are all for the resurrection of Voldemort. Harry guessed. Maybe. Dumbledore has recently been discussing with Grindelwald whether to change it to a 4-strong tournament. Lupin shrugged. "There's another school? Which magic school?" "Castellobush, Caudestores, Institute of Magic, Vergato, Alvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." When Harry mentioned the last Alvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, he emphasized his tone and looked at Ron, who happened to be looking over. If these members participating in the tournament also represent the power to resist Voldemort, then Alvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, which already has its own kingdom on the moon, is undoubtedly the best choice. Although most people in this school probably don't know Yu-Chen. Aren't there 11 magic schools? As for the other 2 magic schools, everyone just knows that they exist, but no one knows their addresses, names, or even when they were established. Lupin shook his head. Harry and Ron looked at each other again. The library in Moon City introduced that there is a magic school in Moon City. And Harry knew that there was also one under the Sea of Atlantis. That's probably not Caudestores. It's in Russia, and obviously they have nothing in common with us, not to mention the magic houses in Japan, although Alvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was built by the descendants of Slytherin. Its current atmosphere is extremely conservative, just like the American wizarding world. Know about, the only one is Castrabusa in South America. It's also the most likely one, Draco suddenly analyzed. "Why?" Ginny asked curiously. "Castrabusa is located deep in the Brazilian Rhine forest. There is a mythical castle, a square building made of golden stones that looks like a temple. The school's buildings and grounds are guarded by Kepler. It has a closer relationship with Hogwarts than any other magic school. Because the 2 schools share a method of hiding their locations, the castle appears to Muddles as a pile of collapsed ruins. Castellobush has a history almost as long as Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry," Lupin said in a pleasant tone. "I know it. It's Ron, Ginny, Harry, and even Draco's jaws dropped. Lupin's eye twitched as Ron raised his. Ron looked at Ginny in confusion. "Why can't you pay attention to your family like I do?" Ron puffed out his chest proudly. Chapter 435, Confrontation in the Screaming Shack. "Is this true?" Ginny looked at her brother suspiciously. She had never heard of this story. And Ron would make up anything to show off. Like they were caught while sending the dragon away, but it turned out that the three of them were stopping poachers from hunting the invisible beast. And he made some contribution in the stage where Professor McGonagall took the lead in everything and stopped Voldemort from taking the Philosopher's Stone. Now, this story is also very likely made up. Draco and Harry also looked at Ron and showed the same expression as Ginny. Ron's opened and closed, not knowing what to say. That may be true. Castrobustas have this exchange program, bringing European students here to learn about South American flora and fauna. In your 6th year, if you are good enough, or know a student from Castrobush who can recommend you, you will receive an invitation to this exchange program. View of Ron, well, then it might indeed be true. Draco looked at Ron. Ron's face was full of confusion as to why it took 6 academic years to participate in this exchange program. Lupin obviously saw this too. As for why we need a 6th year, that's because, in our country, or even when you go to work in other countries, you cannot do without 2 certificates, the OWLT, Ordinary Wizarding Level Test, Certificate, and the OWLT, Ultimate Wizarding Level Test, Certificate, and 7th years respectively. Lupin looked at Ron. Ron looked surprised. This statement was obviously answering his doubts. "How do you know? Did I just ask it by accident?" Just as Ron was doubting his memory, Harry raised his hand. "This school, I mean, do they have a Quidditch there?" asked Harry. It's not that Harry is shallow and mistakenly thinks Quidditch is only found in Europe. America has always been more popular with the quaffle. Matt's team passed the quaffle, a modified quaffle, to each other, and try to throw it into a small crucible at the top of the court before it explodes. Any player holding the quaffle must withdraw from the game if the ball explodes in his hands. Once the quaffle is safely thrown into the small crucible, the team that scored a point and then brings a new quaffle to the court. In North America, Canada and the United States have only 5 famous Quidditch club teams. As for South America, Harry had never heard of any Quidditch club teams. As for the Brazilian national team, it doesn't count in Harry's opinion. In the eyes of the majority of Quidditch fans, the national team doesn't mean anything. Only Quidditch club teams represent the sport in this country. Quidditch club team in South America, the Tarapato Treefleers. That's actually because Quidditch in South America was spread by European wizards who were sent to Peru by the International Confederation of Wizards to monitor the venom-fanged dragons, said Ron, a Quidditch expert, confidently. "Harry, don't be depressed just because you are not as good as me in this aspect." Ron looked very proud, venting his anger on Harry because he and Ginny had just questioned him. "Ron, that must mean you understand a lot." "Of course, I understand very well." Ron raised his head higher. "Isn't Labasha Palach, one of the most famous pharmacists in the world, a wizard who graduated from Castrobus?" Harry raised the corners of his mouth with ill intent. This potions teacher hadn't changed. It would have been our potions textbook for the 6th grade. There is also the Asian Anti-Drug Encyclopedia, which will also be used as a reference book in the 5th year curriculum at Hogwarts. And their author is Labasha Palach. As for whether he graduated from Castrobus, I don't know. Harry patted Ron's shoulder. "I wonder if that's normal then. I'm only in my 2nd year." Ron smiled again. "Ginny, have you heard of the book Give Yourself a Carnival in a Bottle?" Lupin said suddenly, her face strange, looking at Harry with a strange look. "Forget it, kids. This is not a book for you. You to read at your age." Even Lily didn't dare to finish reading it until after she married James. Lupin said in response to the curious gazes of Harry and the others. To be honest, he regretted it as soon as he mentioned the name of the book. Children of this age are naturally curious. The more he told them not to do something, the more they wanted to do it. If Harry read the book because of what he said, then Arthur and Molly can probably have their grandchildren earlier. That book. Draco hesitated. He had seen it in his parents' bedroom. "Well, you might as well worry about next year's Final Four tournament. This competition is not like the usual ones. It is no longer a competition between a few selected warriors. It is a competition among all the teachers and students in the school." Lupin changed the subject abruptly. He had thought that this wouldn't happen, but Ron jumped out. What? Lupin had the opportunity to see Ron's expression after receiving the gold galleons from the Weasley twins. It was not as intense as it is now. We need to analyze it first. Draco, who seemed to be the most stable among the four, was also affected. Bugsbuttons, especially good at alchemy. Harry thought of Nicholas Flamel, Durmstrang, very good at dark magic. Draco thought of the information his father had told him. He would have almost gone to Durmstrang if his mother hadn't been reluctant to let him go because it was too far from home. What about Castellablush? Ginny said. They all looked at Lupin. Students at Castrubing are very good at herbology and magismology. So much so that the Castrubing uniform is a bright green robe, Lupin replied hastily later, thanks to classmates 1,512,042. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. 017-160,225,145,513,236, 201807231559298838 for their monthly tickets and other classmates for their recommendations and subscriptions. Chapter 436 Ryan's Little Move. Just one color. It's scary to think about it, Ron complained. Neville will love this school. Harry shrugged. Apparently, Lupin's words made them relax their vigilance against the students of Castrabusa. Compared to the dark arts and alchemy, herbology and magisology were clearly not worthy of attention. Half minutes later. Wait, what's that? Harry pointed to the opposite side of the four-poster bed, where the heat in the room came from. The fire. Ron touched Harry's forehead. He wondered if Harry had a fever. This, Lupin, is this connected to the flu network? Draco couldn't help but take a few steps back. Lupin agreed. Why don't we go back the way we came? Flu network is an interconnected network that anyone can use. Therefore, for important institutions like Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic, there are generally not many fireplaces connected to the flu network, and they can be counted on one hand. At least they knew that the fireplace in Lupin's bedroom at Hogwarts was not connected to the flu network. The others, except for the one in Professor McGonagall's bedroom, would only be left open late at night. Moreover, there is usually someone guarding the fireplace. The information they had received from Fred and George. Children, I'm a teacher. Lupin looked at the four frightened people and smiled with satisfaction. Not satisfied. Not satisfied. Ryan was extremely dissatisfied. In the end, Lupin did not take the four of them back to Hogwarts through the flu network in the fireplace. Instead, he chose another way to return that even Ryan found interesting. The four of them took the shrinking potion again and returned to the castle in the wolf-like body of Lupin. How interesting it is. It's like riding a 100-meter-long giant wolf and galloping through a dark tunnel. Ryan suddenly regretted his decision and acted extraordinary in front of Harry and the others. If not, he could pretend to be a kid and go on adventures with him. But the next second, it's so itchy. In the Ravenclaw common room, Ryan was lying on Luna's lap, and Luna was poking his ears gently with her hair. What an adventure. Is there Luna fragrance? Ryan, how come Potter and the others? Isn't Grindelwald famous? The silver rune representing the connection flashed on her hand, and Luna, who saw Harry and the others' entire journey through Ryan's senses, asked. 2 reasons. First, Grindelwald's ideas are too contagious and too dangerous to the existing political system. His slogans are not wrong. It's just that the implementation is lame. The second one is Voldemort. He is so famous that now when people mention the Dark Lord, they only mention him. Grindelwald? Where did this little jerk come from? Ryan turned over, causing Luna to scream. Will Voldemort really be resurrected next year? After Ryan stopped tossing and turning, Luna, whose wisdom had regained the upper hand, looked at Ryan, who was resting his head on her thighs with burning eyes. To be precise, it should be 364 days, 2 hours and 1 second. Ryan waved his wand, and a virtual number that shrank with time floated in the air. This year's summer comes earlier than usual, Luna said suddenly. Yes, at Hogwarts, summer usually means the arrival of June, and the first week of June is the final exams. If we convert the time, next year's final exams might be cancelled, Ryan said casually. It's already the end of May, Thursday. It will be June next Monday. By this calculation of time, if Voldemort is resurrected, there will probably be no exams. But why is it an estimate? The premise is that Ryan would not be in trouble at that time. If there is something you really don't want to be disturbed for the time being, Kamen Rider Cronus will come. Voldemort alights from his throne and appears before Dumbledore and the young version of Voldemort. Poor students, the year-end final exams are not hell for the top students. Instead, they are indispensable things that prove their achievements and bring them a sense of accomplishment. Thus, in the center of the North Sea, on the vast sea level, in the dark sky, a ray of lightning flashed by, just right through the gap that was invisible to the naked eye. Then there was a roar filled with rage that seemed to destroy the entire world. The air increased. 394 days, 1 hour, 59 minutes and 28 seconds. Okay, Voldemort will be resurrected during the summer vacation and the exams will not be cancelled. Ryan agreed. In the dark corridor of Hogwarts Castle, Ron suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Harry, who was sneaking towards the 6th floor, turned his head and asked in a low voice. They were now separated from Draco and Lupin. As for Filch, who had a werewolf's sense of smell, excellent hearing, high mobility, and knowledge of the secret passage, Lupin had checked for them. He was petting a cat and would not go out for an hour. I suddenly feel like crying. Ron touched his heart in confusion. It's like Christmas is cancelled. Well, in case Filch smells us, Ginny turned around and growled in annoyance. While Harry and Ron were talking, she kept looking around warily. Worry, he's in the administrator's office. I've been there before. Because Mrs. Norris likes to eat fish, the place is filled with the smell of fried fish. We are on the 4th floor now, which is this far from the 1st floor. If we all get caught by Filch, I'm going to— Harry looked around, eat Ron's hair. It's a cat's meow. Harry felt it was familiar, but it was too late to recall it. Run. The three were about to go up, but the three of them had no choice but to run to the room at the end of the 4th floor. Came running slowly from behind him. I'm sorry, Harry Potter, that we meet at this time. Filch curled the corners of his mouth, revealing his sharp canine teeth. Good job. Ryan touched the fat cat Jerry, who jumped onto his belly thanks to Zuwuka for his monthly ticket and other classmates for their recommendations and subscriptions. Chapter 437 Course Selection. The next day, when the Ravenclaw students woke up, they were surprised to find something. In the corner of the hall, set in a niche, was the Ravenclaw hourglass filled with sapphires, but a large part of the gem was missing from the lower half of the hourglass. Although it is still more than any other house, the number of emeralds in Slytherin's hourglass is close to that of Ravenclaw's sapphires. When they learned that the instigators of this incident were Harry, his girlfriend, and Ron, the three of them were unexpectedly not rejected by others. Among them, Harry's influence in Hogwarts and the fact that most Ravenclaws don't care much about their house rankings are not the main factors. After Filch became a wolf wizard, the night walks that were almost customary at Hogwarts, as long as they were not caught in the act, almost disappeared for a while. But Filch's outstanding performance also aroused the rebellious psychology of Hogwarts students. Almost most of the Hogwarts students, who were confident in their magic and rarely went out at night on weekdays, also started going out at night. Then they were caught one by one and points were deducted among them. Gryffindor and Slytherin are the majority. Gryffindor is because they are adventurous and brave. The reason for Slytherin is that it has the highest proportion of pure-blood students compared to the other three colleges. They all knew more or less about the squibs, the werewolves. And the incarnation of Fenrir and Filch was obviously a squib. They were already proud of their noble bloodline and obviously would not allow a squib to stand out in Hogwarts because of lycanthropy and the magic in a ridiculous newspaper. Therefore, in the eyes of most Hogwarts students, what Harry and his friends did was a recent trend, and most students wanted to try it. Can understand, however. This also leads to the point that the scores of the four houses are now: Gryffindor 17, Hufflepuff 35, Slytherin 49, Ravenclaw 58. This is a score that has never been achieved since the school was founded. The deans of the four colleges have almost given up and don't care much about this year's college divisions points added by the Champions Cup. Even if Ravenclaw has deducted all the points recently, the House Cup may still belong to Ravenclaw. However, Harry and the others didn't care too much about this. Because according to common sense, course selection should have been delayed to today before the Easter holiday in March. Because of this, second-year students had no classes on Friday, the last working day of the school year. Exams were in June. They were all in the lounge or somewhere else thinking about what courses to take for their third year. Harry and the others were in the Great Hall, right along with Draco. As usual, Pansy, Crabbe, and Goyle did not come to the Ravenclaw table. As for choosing courses, according to Draco, they would choose whatever he chose. Not far away, because Luna was in class, Hermione, who thought she had Ryan all to herself, was complaining, "Why can't we just take all the subjects like students in previous years?" The culprit, Ryan, who made the Ministry of Magic afraid to use the time turner again, said, "The courses we already have are compulsory courses, so don't worry about them. Divination class, arithmancy, places too much emphasis on talent. There are only a handful of people with a gift of prophecy at Hogwarts. Hermione, you don't have to choose it. As for Muggle studies, its content is already outdated, and Riddle's defense against the dark arts is enough. Ancient runes, they are useful, if you really want to become a master of magic rather than a user. Even the worst teacher of magical creatures can hardly make it boring, and it is very useful." In the original world line, Hagrid's magical creatures class became boring in Harry's 4th year. In fact, it was because Hagrid also took on the task of breeding new species and participating in the Goblet of Fire competition mentioned. Hermione sweetly checked the new courses. Harry suddenly said, "I know which 3 courses I don't need to take: divination, arithmancy, and Muggle studies." "Wait, you listened to Ryan, didn't you? Harry, you have a talent for prophecy, you must take the divination class." Ron rolled his eyes. "Also, you must take Muggle studies. Wizarding test will also be better." Malfoy made suggestions from a utilitarian perspective. "That's right. The future development of the wizarding world cannot be separated from the knowledge of the Muggle world." Ron suddenly thought, when looking for a job in the wizarding world, the score on your diploma or certificate is very important. If you want to choose a Muggle-related job, without taking Muggle studies, even if you really know about Muggles, you will not be as good as those who have the score of this course on their certificate. It's not like he's a Muggle-born wizard who can rely on his Muggle-born status to get a job. Since I can't choose 12 subjects, I'll just drop arithmancy and Muggle studies. Harry made up his mind. So which one should I remove? I don't want to take 10 courses. Ron closed his eyes and randomly pointed his wand at the list, deciding which course he would take. Divination. No, because of Lavender, I also want to take divination class. Ron said bitterly. I don't want Muggle studies anymore. Arithmancy. Ron hesitated. He thought Lavender might choose it, felt that at least he had Harry and the others with him. And Muggle studies? Although Draco believed that knowledge of the Muggle world was indeed important, the Muggle studies class at Hogwarts was indeed not that good. Ron's father was self-taught. You don't have to take arithmancy. Seamus at the Gryffindor table turned his head. During our herbology class, Lavender had a quarrel with Ernie Macmillan from Hufflepuff. But maybe it wasn't a quarrel. They had an argument about which class was better, divination or arithmancy. You know, I don't need to tell you, that Lavender is from the divination department. She and Parvati go to Professor Trelawney's divination class almost every time they have free time. As far as I can see, there's no way she'll choose arithmancy. Dean also turned around and said of the Phoenix, that's great. I don't have to cross out the ancient magic words. I was almost done with this course and my genius brain would have been lost. Ron breathed a sigh of relief. The people around looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Dean and Seamus regretted what they said even more. As a result, ancient magic will welcome students like Ron. Chapter 438 Exam. At Hogwarts, there was no market for magical props like air conditioners and fans from the beginning. Because usually in June, when summer comes, Hogwarts will be temporarily closed, because of the summer vacation. Ryan finally understood why he never saw any props for cooling down in the Harry Potter books when he read them in his previous life. However, Ryan was the only one who had time to think about anything else. Because today is June 6th, the day of the exam. Harry felt like he was dreaming. I was still thinking about what courses to choose yesterday, and today I have the exam. The only thing that made Harry feel relieved was that although summer had arrived, the weather was not very hot recently, so they didn't have to take exams in a steaming room like last school year. This wasn't hard for Harry. In the afternoon, their second exam was Transfiguration, and the practical part was Professor McGonagall watching them turn a rabbit into slippers. The more realistic the slippers are, the higher the score will be, otherwise the score will be deducted. The criteria for judging realism are based on the reaction after stimulation by appearance, touch and smell. The pair of slippers that Ron had transformed into was irritated by the pepper and made him sneeze. The third subject was potions, which was held early in the morning of the second day, and the exam was about preparing a swelling potion. Everyone was yawning, But fortunately Snape's presence cheered everyone up. What should I do? I always feel like I forgot something. After the potions exam, in the Great Hall, at lunchtime, Ron suddenly stood up. He looked at Harry. Harry, would you mind repeating the steps? 1. Add 2 spoons of dried nettle to the mortar and 3 portions of puffer fish eyes to the mortar and grind into medium fine powder. 2. Add 2 parts of the mixture powder to the crucible, heat at the middle temperature for 20 seconds, wave the wand, and simmer for 60 minutes. 3. Add 1 portion of bat spleen to the crucible, counterclockwise 4 times, heat on low heat for 30 seconds, and wave the wand to complete the potion. Very simple. The final product is light blue and transparent. Harry said casually, receiving admiring glances from those around him who were wondering about the answer. It's over, I put an extra portion of bat spleen. Ron laid on the table, even the steak in front of him didn't smell good. If you put too much bat spleen swelling, your swelling potion will cause extra irritation to the skin. You should know that the effect of the swelling potion is that the part of the body that comes into contact with a potion will swell. Many married witches use it diluted. It would be a nightmare if your swelling potion was used. Harry couldn't help but win as I imagined the scene. The precocious Ron couldn't help but feel phantom pain. With such a strange feeling, the 4th exam came in the afternoon, herbal medicine class. The exam for the herbal medicine class is about dealing with poisonous tentacles adults habit. The vines are mobile and will attempt to grab nearby living prey. They paralyze the prey with venom secreted from the twigs and sometimes with the spikes. When dealing with large animals, they will extend their fangs, which contain deadly venom. Harry wrote as he thought during the written test. As for the practical classes that followed, Harry knew immediately that they would not have to check their answers after the herbology exam. All they had to do was to change the parts of the poisonous tentacles that had not yet grown fangs. After the exam, even Neville, who was the best at herbology, was covered in dirt and scratches. As for the neat and tidy Ryan, he is a pervert and cannot be regarded as an ordinary wizard. What was even more outrageous in Harry's opinion was that, because of the venom from the poisonous tentacles, most of them felt numb all over and felt no pain when they were punched by Harry. Ron, who was used as a test, wanted to curse tentacles to make wine. They already like beating each other, and now that they can no longer feel pain, they can do it even more fiercely. After intense review, the 3rd day arrived. Today is the last day of examinations for the 2nd grade students. After the exam, they can play for a week and 4 days. Harry was stunned. A traceless stretching spell was cast on the entire room, and the space inside was much larger than it looked from the outside. The classroom is divided into long passages using white wooden boards. At the other end of the passage, there was a metal prosthetic hand, on which was a metal wand, a gun. Worry, these metal ones are toys and won't be as destructive as the real ones. You put on this robe, it will record how many times you've been hit. Okay, the exam begins. Riddle said at the podium at the back of the corridor. 10 minutes later, almost everyone came out of the passage wearing spotted robes. This is too difficult. If I wasn't blocked by this wooden board, I could at least dodge it. Harry, who already had excellent insight and had been transformed by magic, sighed. However, a white spot on his examination robe showed that his definition of difficult was clearly flawed. This can also be seen from Ron's depressed face and robes covered with white spots. The last exam was History of Magic, which followed the written exam in Defense Against the Dark Arts. How tight is it? It was so tight that in the classroom, Harry and his friends received 2 test papers at once. Professor Riddle, the invigilator, even allowed us to write History of Magic first. Because after the exam, both test papers will be checked together. So, Harry and the others took the new quills that the teacher gave them for exams and started answering the questions, and the purpose is to standardize the use of flying broomsticks. Make it public. In just 20 minutes, Harry's answers filled the test paper of the History of Magic exam. And just like that, the exam was over. For Harry, the only thing now was the Quidditch final on Saturday. In that competition, he will compete against Dudley again. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, Quidditch Final. It's crazy, it's all crazy. Is this still Quidditch? The Hufflepuff chasers have all given up their work. The beaters are staring at one person and trying to interfere with the seekers. And that person is Harry Potter. Seats were now silent, as they all stared at the two figures on the field, Dudley and Harry. Listen to Lee Jordan's surprised, loud voice. Even Professor McGonagall was not moved by Lee Jordan's obviously out-of-line commentary. And shouted out loud, "This is not a standard explanation." As a former Quidditch player, she has not missed a single game since becoming a professor to breathe because everything in front of us really goes beyond the rules of Quidditch and the limits of the human body. Surrounded by the crowd and targeted by the bludger, Harry Potter was like a swift in a storm, tenacious, flexible and beyond imagination. The broom in his hand was the fastest, but not much faster than the other brooms. However, in his hands, the Nimbus 2001 turned decay into magic, presenting a scene that could be called a miracle. Every tiny, inconspicuous movement of the broom allowed Harry to dodge at least 3 simultaneous attacks on him. Even the back of Harry's head seemed to have an eye. He dodged the flying bludger by gently tilting his head to the left. Cedric, the Hufflepuff seeker, could barely keep peace with Harry under such circumstances. Keep your eyes on the goal of victory, the Golden Snitch. Ravenclaw's crazy attack that was like a storm. The quaffles flew towards the circle behind him like meteors, and when they fell into their hands, they seemed to have lost all their kinetic energy. Harry, beautiful. Harry actually saw the siege through his blind spot. Harry got the Golden Snitch. Ravenclaw wins. 150-0. In the stands, he was boiling with excitement. Even the defeated Hufflepuffs suddenly wanted to kill several people around him. Yes, I came to watch the game this time too. And he didn't sit with Luna, Penelope and the others. This was because this was the final, and his creation, Harry Potter, had already been transformed, and his blood had already turned silver white. Dudley Dursley could barely be considered Ryan's creation. This time, it was the first real showdown between his works, and Ryan decided to take it seriously. But he couldn't have imagined that he would actually meet some of the best people in the world in the stands. Ever since the Triwizard Tournament was about to take place, the students of Hogwarts were surprised to learn that there were other magic schools. They also gradually got to know the influential people in other schools themselves and criticizing anyone who dares to compare Harry and Trump. There's no such thing as putting this performance aside. However, Ryan is not the kind of person who will swallow his anger when he's disgusted. Next week, during a whole week of entertainment, these guys who said disgusting things will accidentally show their ugly side in front of others. In addition to these top-notch items, Ryan also discovered some interesting things. That is, several Slytherins suddenly had a werewolf-like aura. Flint, the guy who would graduate next year and never play Quidditch again, sat next to them. They all stood up and applauded Harry Potter. However, Ryan could see that they were not applauding for Harry. It seemed that they were applauding for themselves, the self who would win the Quidditch Cup next year. Obviously, these werewolves are their secret weapons. Later, they will use this to train Slytherin, who is the incarnation of Fenrir, just to replicate this point of Harry. Ryan shook his head. He could see that this might not be an isolated case in the future. If the organizers of the Quidditch World Cup don't pay attention to this in advance, the Quidditch field will be full of werewolves and wizards in the future. Just like in the original World Line, all the players in the Quidditch World Cup used firebolts towards the stands. Harry just felt that he had never been more popular. Even the Slytherins who used to hate him the most were happy for his victory. Under the protection of Hagrid with flames on his head, Ginny emerged from the four-colored sea of people and threw herself into his arms. The flame on Hagrid's head, that is, Hephaestus, also transformed into hands and hugged him intimately. The warmth without the burning sensation that burned his body was particularly wonderful. Ron and Draco each hugged their girlfriends and waved from a distance. Neville stood awkwardly with Ron and the others, smiling warmly at Harry. Anthony, Terry, and Michael held up a huge banner and waved it in the sky. The outline of Harry was painted on it with colorful paint. Harry in the painting kept waving his hands, and the words Harry Potter, the strongest seeker appeared. Seamus of Gryffindor threw a bunch of flowers into the air spread out. Fred and George took out the recliner-like flying machine again and started selling smoke bottles and some small gadgets they invented in mid-air. With his blessings, he carried Ginny to the stands where Dumbledore was holding the huge Quidditch trophy. "Youth is so beautiful, just like a glass of mellow gin." Dumbledore said something that only he and Grindelwald could understand, and put the trophy in his hands. Thanks to Lancet 9527 for the monthly ticket and other classmates for the recommendation and subscription. Chapter 440 News of Engagement. In the room at the end of the corridor on the 4th floor, Harry and his 3 companions chose to gather here to avoid the crowds, but they were not as happy as they were on the Quidditch field. They all had strange expressions on their faces and looked towards the ground. Ron and Ginny had their backs to each other, pouting. All this happened because of a conversation just now alone. In order to have a quiet afternoon, after lunch, Ron, Ginny and Harry, as well as Draco, who was temporarily separated from Pansy and the others, spent the rest of the day in the room that Dumbledore had forbidden them to approach last year, with a pot of iced pumpkin juice, a few chocolate frogs, licorice ones and other snacks. For some reason, Ron seemed very happy. Haha, Lavender and I are finally one step closer. Thank you, Harry. You're welcome. Harry felt a little speechless and took a sip of the cold pumpkin juice with a little ice to calm himself. What did it have to do with him? And Ginny was here. But there is one annoying thing. Professor Trelawney, who has never left the house, actually came to watch the game. No attention to the increasingly ugly face of Ginny beside him. Ron, why don't we talk about something else? Draco, who loved to see Ron make a fool of himself, couldn't help but remind him. What else to talk about? I think it was that Trelawney who said something bad about me. If I had known I would not have chosen divination, I would only have 9 courses next year. Ron waved his fist, as if punching the air. You vile hypocrite. He always points fingers at me and Harry. Why do you change your face when it's your turn? Lavender tried to push you away, but you refused to let go. Nausea. I think Parvati and Professor Trelawney did the right thing. Ginny raised her eyebrows, her eyes raised high, with a look of disdain on her face. In her opinion, Trelawney and Parvati were just doing the same thing Ron had done to her and Harry. Harry winked cryptically at Ginny and gave a cautious thumbs up. Draco held down Ron, who was about to walk towards Ginny. So, the two of them have been in a cold war until now. Harry's ears moved at a level that was barely perceptible to the naked eye. The sound of an owl flapping its wings came from far away, then gradually approached. It reached Harry's ears. Hydvid. It's you. Hagrid pecked Harry's fingers affectionately, revealing the letter on his right leg. Dear Harry, you are worthy of being James' son. You and your friends found the Shrieking Shack just like us back then. Also, using the shrinking potion to ride on Remus was a really good idea. Unlike before, we could only transform into animals and move in the tunnels. Remus and Twinks are back together, you don't have to worry. You seem to already know that Voldemort will be resurrected shortly next year. I don't know how you know that. But this will not affect the subsequent arrangements. In other words, it is because he will be resurrected that we want to hold a party to fill the world with more love. Harry couldn't help swallowing at this, and Ginny's eyes lit up. Ron was no longer angry. Draco laughed mischievously. A party that should have been held long ago? Your and Ginny's engagement party. The date is set for June 6th. I asked Dumbledore, and he said that the power in your body is now stable and you no longer need to return to the Dursleys if possible. I want you to come to me myself. Love you, Sirius Black. Harry, did you hear that? We're going to get engaged like Draco and Pansy, this month, 2 weeks and 2 days later. Ginny hugged Harry and hung her whole body around his neck. Ginny, you're still just a child. I won't allow it. Ron was furious, and his fiery red hair suddenly stood up. Can you think of me as a child at this moment? Is Lavender still not a child in the eyes of Parvati and Professor Trelawney? Ginny's face suddenly fell, and she turned her head and tortured Ron. This is different. It's an engagement. You should find someone more reliable. I mean, Harry might be good, but he's just a child. Maybe you will meet someone better and more suitable for you in the future. Ron replied with a red face and without flinching. Draco, you give us your verdict. As someone who's already engaged, come and persuade Harry and the others. Ginny and Ron stared at Draco, who was watching the fun. Well, since they are engaged, it means that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley agree. Same goes for Sirius. Since the adults have agreed, and Harry and Ginny are willing, I think, Ron, you should stop making trouble. Draco looked at Ginny and Ron, and said after careful consideration. Harry doesn't want to. I noticed. Harry used to watch Cho Chang, the third-year chaser for the Ravenclaw Quidditch team, practice every morning. And the ghost of Ravenclaw, Lady Grey, I heard Harry call her Helena. You know, Ghosts are now developing towards living people. Maybe one day ghosts will be able to have children with humans. That can be seen from Myrtle. As Ginny's brother, I think she should seriously consider getting engaged to Harry. He probably doesn't want to settle down so early. Ron seemed like a different person, looking at Harry with a critical eye. The Harry in front of him seemed no longer his friend, but an old enemy. Harry. Ginny looked at Harry, who was sweating slightly. Have you forgotten? At that time, I had to get up at 6 o'clock every day to do something. I've already told you about the side effects of that. As for Ms. Gray, she can be my great-grandmother. Harry looked at Ginny unhappily. Although he did have feelings for both of them, Ginny was not with him at that time. Draco was confused. Why did Harry have to get up at 6 o'clock? And what is that and what are the side effects? But now is obviously not the time to ask these questions. How dare you say that you have never had any feelings for them? Ron continued, unconvinced another again. Chapter 441 confused Harry. Tick, tick. Along with the sound of rain falling from the eaves, on the ceiling, a clock made of clear mountain spring water and stream stones is ticking slowly. Under the ceiling, on a pink, furry four-poster bed, Ryan was wearing moon-white silk pajamas, his hands crossed behind his head, looking straight at the ceiling. The magic power of invisible matter gushed out inexhaustibly, maintaining the bodies in Hogwarts with Luna and Hermione respectively, as well as everything in the empty world of thought. It has been nearly 7 years since he has traveled through time, and Ryan has been relying on love and occasional fun to maintain his humanity. In order to avoid being dominated by the feeling of omnipotence, enjoying everything too quickly, and losing the eyes to perceive the beauty of life and the endless time to come. Treating everyday life as nothing, you can only see its dullness and meaninglessness. Therefore, Ryan generally does not manipulate or influence others. I will only occasionally do something outside the original world line and then see what direction this real movie will develop in. However, Ryan did not find the conversation between Harry Potter and the others interesting. Ron and Ginny's opinions and arguments about Ginny and Harry had already happened more than once in the original world line. In Ryan's opinion, it is an interesting, but not that interesting story. At this moment, what Ryan wanted to see more was what choice Harry Potter would make after he no longer needed to return to the Dursleys. This is much more interesting. So, in the room on the 4th floor corridor of Hogwarts, Ron, who was about to say something, suddenly shut up. He was suddenly enlightened. Looking at Harry and Ginny hugging each other, he suddenly felt that he had no right to intervene. Doesn't he know very well what kind of person Harry is? Since both Harry and Ginny had agreed, why should he, as Harry's brother and friend, object? Isn't this great? The relationship between him and Harry will be closer than that between Draco and others. Harry, have you made up your mind? The Dursleys, are you still going back? In the eyes of Harry and others, Ron suddenly changed his expression. He looked sincere and full of concern for Harry. But he ignored Ginny, who was almost stuck to Harry. That's not Ron at all. What's your plan? Ginny let go of Harry's hand and narrowed her eyes. Harry? This is not impossible. During the conversation with Harry, it became clear that the contradictory and strange Aunt Petunia in Harry's eyes had long since shed her mysterious veil in Ginny's eyes. From Ginny's perspective, what his aunt did was actually easy to understand. To get the magic out of Harry, who had taken his sister away from her. In the eyes of Harry's aunt, the magical world was probably something she longed for but also feared. In her eyes, Harry's father was probably the devil who led her sister astray. And now, Ginny might replace Harry's father in Harry's aunt's heart. So Ginny, do you want Harry's aunt to stop the relationship between me and Harry? How can this be? Harry's aunt couldn't do that. Just like she couldn't stop Harry from coming to Hogwarts. Ron looked at his cranky sister unhappily. And for the first time, Harry felt that Ginny might really be Ron's sister. Before this, he had never believed this. He had always suspected that Ron might have been adopted by Mr. Weasley from somewhere else. After all, there are so many Weasleys in the British wizarding world, and there might be one whose parents are both dead. But now, Ginny's thought process, which was as weird as Ron's, undoubtedly proved their relationship. Ron and Ginny are real siblings with the same father and mother. Ginny, isn't Ron like that? Always giving up halfway. Then I thought of some weird questions. Harry touched Ginny's head, then he looked at Ron again. I've already made up my mind. Well, I'm going back to the Dursleys. Although it's possible that I'll only stay for a day or two. As soon as Harry said this, everyone present began to suspect that there was something wrong with their ears. Did I hear you correctly? You're going back to the Dursleys. Crazy. Draco, Ginny and Ron couldn't help but say. I'm not crazy. Yes, I do hate the Dursleys. Just like this competition, the reason I took it so seriously was because I didn't want to lose Dudley. I also thought about leaving them forever. To the point where Dudley and I barely spoke a word at school. I don't even know what classes he's taking now. I didn't realize it until Sirius told me in the letter just now that I didn't have to go back there. I realized that what Dumbledore said was right. Even though they might not treat me well, it was a place that was willing to accept me despite the risk of being attacked by wizards. Tolerating me being possessed by their nasty magic, I entered their home. Don't look at me like that, Draco. And Ron, and you, Ginny. Where I grew up. I will write to Sirius and explain this later. I'll just stay at the Dursleys for 2 or 3 days and see how they hate me but have to accept me. And then go to Sirius. Harry couldn't help laughing when he said this. He seemed to see Uncle Vernon looking at him with a pair of piggy eyes. Aunt Petunia twisted her long neck, annoyed looking and fearful, and also, Harry came back to reality. He suddenly felt a little regretful. Dudley was no longer the same as before. He is no longer the villain Darth Vader, Fat Tiger, in the Skywalker comics Doraemon. Dudley was a completely different person now. She was concerned about Harry's well-being all day long. It would be great if you were the same as before. Harry shook his head and sighed. You're really crazy. Ron couldn't help but say. He began to suspect that the side effects of the silver-white potion that replaced Harry's blood might not leave Harry's body so easily. It may also have the side effect of confusing people's brains in some way. It's almost 6 o'clock now. Why don't we go to the hall to eat something and then go back to the bedroom to have a good sleep? Ginny echoed Ron's words. She thought that after Harry's sleep, his mind would be clear. Chapter 442 Year-End Dinner. Ron and the others finally accepted Harry's opinion. But deep down, they believed that Harry had not yet woken up from his dream, the dream in which he was still just a muggle being abused in the Dursleys' house. Harry wanted to go back to the Dursleys for a few days, just to clearly realize that he was no longer an ordinary little boy. He is a wizard. As Harry went to Lupin to say hello, Ron shielded the other side of his face with his hand and grumbled quietly. Ginny and Draco agreed. During the rest of the summer semester, Ron and the others deliberately and unanimously avoided mentioning that topic again. They ran over to Hagrid whenever they had time throughout the day. Hephaestus' ability to absorb heat makes Hagrid's cabin like it has air conditioning. Lavender also found Ron to be unexpectedly kind after he tried to approach this seemingly rude big man. Ravenclaw won the House Cup for 2 consecutive years. On the wall behind the guest of honor seat hung a huge banner with a Ravenclaw eagle painted on it. Harry sat at the Ravenclaw table, next to Ron and Ginny. Ryan, Hermione, and Luna sat next to Ginny. Ron looked as if he was about to say something, and Harry knew exactly what he was going to say. Probably, Leon is so amazing that he can deal with 2 witches at the same time. But since the last trip to Moon City, Ron, knowing Ryan's abilities, no longer dared to say anything behind his back. More cautious than he lets on. This may be why Ron is so outspoken but still manages to live to this age. He knew how to restrain himself so as not to offend those he could not afford to offend. At the main guest table, where the faculty sat, Dumbledore was talking to Professor McGonagall, who was sitting next to him. It seemed that he would stand up and speak soon. Honest, Harry was forward to this speech, and the sooner it started, the better. Because Harry noticed that the students around him were staring at him from time to time. This made him very uncomfortable. That's why I stayed with Hagrid. Although it was color at Hagrid's place, it was also color under the shade of the beech trees on the hillside beside the Black Lake, and you could also watch the witches playing in the water openly. Although the magical transformation of various Muggle props has attracted the enthusiasm of a large number of Quidditch fans, but Quidditch is a worldwide game, and almost all Hogwarts students can still tell the level of a player this time. Harry's performance undoubtedly surpassed almost all the Seekers they knew of. Harry Potter was trash. This made a group of students who had not paid attention to Harry also noticed him. Not to mention the witches who were staying in the infirmary because of this incident and who have not been discharged yet. These days, Harry has been attracting a lot of attention in the common room. There were even some witches from other colleges who came to the Ravenclaw common room. They thought they were more worthy of Harry and could be his girlfriend. Ginny was very angry and secretly released some invisible and vicious little bats. What's even more outrageous is that Harry was also bitten several times. He is obviously innocent. This made Harry think of Ryan again. It would be great if he was like Ryan. For this purpose, he even found Neville, wanting to learn the magic circle that Neville learned from Ryan to conceal himself. But Neville refused, saying he had to get Ryan's consent. Ryan's whereabouts in the past few days have become mysterious again now, at the end of year dinner, that he saw Ryan in person at the party. In this mood, after an unknown amount of time, Dumbledore finally stood up. The noise in the hall gradually subsided, and his attention was drawn to Dumbledore. "Another year," said Dumbledore, looking at everyone, and everyone and. He paused and looked at the Ravenclaw table. "Before you enjoy your meal, I have to say a few words to spoil the fun. You may have noticed that Ravenclaw is the winner of the House Cup this year, but you didn't notice one thing." Dumbledore paused and looked down with surprisingly not excited about this, and hung their heads like the students at others. "Some of you might say that this has nothing to do with you, and that it's all because of Filch. He's just more powerful now than before." Dumbledore looked at Filch, who puffed out his chest proudly, "But after being deducted points so many times, what you have to do is not to foolishly go out for a night cruise like everyone else. That's not courage, it's recklessness. I am very disappointed that Gryffindor has tables plummeted from third to last in just 1 month. You all probably know what's coming up next year, the Triwizard Tournament." Yes, it's true. There was sparse applause from the students below. Because, although this competition still has the previous tradition, selecting the best students from several schools to participate in the competition as warriors, people looked at Harry, but this time is a little different. In addition to the warriors, your performance is also part of this game, so, during this almost rare summer vacation, I hope you can still stick to magic, study hard, and prepare for the semifinals. There was suddenly a noisy discussion in the audience. Yes, this year, you can still use magic after leaving school. But this is for the competition. Don't use magic where you shouldn't. The Ministry of Magic will be ready. Let's eat. Dumbledore waved his hand. Chapter 443, Discovery at the end of the second school year. In front of the magnificent cast iron gate, the poisonous sun hung high in the sky, and the winged wild boars on the stone pillars were twisting in the boiling air. The Hogwarts students, who had changed into muggle clothes, were squatting under the shade of the trees on the road outside the gate, waiting for the arrival of the empty carriage. Suddenly, an inexplicable coolness came over me. The sun is still burning the earth and the air seems to be distorted. This is not even rain, there is not a trace of moisture in the air. But the temperature suddenly dropped. Everyone looked towards the cool feeling that was getting closer and closer. It was the gamekeeper Hagrid. At this moment, everyone almost thought he was Weasley. But when he walked in, he realized that his fiery red hair was like a burning flame trees. It felt like we were in a rainy day. "Hagrid, thanks to you." Ron wiped the sweat from his head and said to Hagrid, who was walking towards them, "Are the Thestrals coming soon?" Ginny, who had just been clinging to Harry's body had been transformed by magic and maintained at a constant temperature under the scorching sun, adjusted her hair and broke away from Harry's arms. "It's Hephaestus. When he knew he wouldn't see you for more than 2 months, he clamored to come over." Hagrid's thick beard couldn't hide his shyness. He pointed at Hephaestus above his head and waved his palms as big as a palm leaf fan. "Are you really going back to the Dursleys? I saw their faces when I picked you up. That Dudley has certainly changed, but his parents. Harry, I think you should think about it." After a brief greeting, Hagrid said after hesitating for a moment, "Are you here to persuade me like Lupin? It's serious. I've made up my mind, and I'll only stay for 2 or 3 days." Harry couldn't help rolling his eyes. Hagrid wanted to say something else, but the carriage had already arrived. Harry waved eagerly to Hagrid and Hephaestus, then pulled Ginny into a carriage. In the carriage, Ginny sat next to Harry and Ron sat opposite them. Draco stayed with his Slytherin friends. Harry's roommates, Anthony and the others, had long been accustomed to Harry not being with them often. After all, they weren't always together on the way to and from getting out of class. Harry needs his own private space, too. Anthony also often secretly complained about Ron's lack of tact, and when Harry and Ginny had a private meeting, Ron always liked to be a light bulb next to them. Especially now that Ron has a girlfriend, he still begged and got on the carriage where Harry and Ginny were alone. Friends like Draco Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle would not always follow Draco, often giving Draco and Harry, Draco and Pansy Parkinson their own private space, and Ron? Sometimes Anthony and the others really doubted that when they were in first year, Rita Skeeter's report saying that Ron had almost romantic feelings for Harry was not nonsense, there were real signs of it. Ginny were being affectionate with each other. Ginny couldn't help but roll her eyes at her brother, but he didn't care at all. Just when you and Draco were complaining that I hadn't woken up from my dream yet and that I had to go back to the Dursleys to confirm that the fact that I'm a wizard is not a dream, Harry replied impatiently. He never understood why Ron liked to stay with him even though he had a girlfriend, instead of being like Draco, who would always stay with Pansy unless necessary. You heard, it's that body transformation magic. Ron immediately looked sad. Incarnation is so powerful. If more and more people learn it in the future, Ron couldn't help but cover his face, leaning forward and leaning on his legs. You understand? Ginny said coldly. She thought that this might help Ron change his habit of talking bad about others behind their backs. Caster and does not spread out. This is more difficult. The mantra of blocking ears and blocking hearing fills the ears of everyone around you with an indistinguishable buzzing sound. Only those who the caster thinks can hear when casting the spell can hear it. This spell was simpler, and Ron found it more useful. Is that all you? Harry couldn't help but bury his head in Ginny's hair. Ginny was also speechless, not wanting to look at this guy who was her brother anymore. The most speechless thing is that the muffling charm was Harry's Christmas gift, a spell recorded in a booklet. There were also some practical spells in that booklet, which were filled with densely packed notes. For example, there is a curse that makes a person's toes grow wildly, and another spell that makes a person's tongue stick to the roof of the mouth. Fuchsia spell, which can hang a person upside down in the air. But Ron used it casually according to the notes without verifying it. That was a strange handwritten spell. Maybe it's banned by the Ministry of Magic. Ginny, don't look at me like that. The magic in that booklet. I asked Lupin about it later in private, before he was hiding from us because of Tonks. Lupin said, these spells were popular when we were young. They are very safe. Many Hogwarts students have verified them for you. Ron could read Ginny's expression clearly at this time. Ginny said nothing. In this awkward silence, the carriage stopped with a stagger. Also released Hewa-Id, and Hewa-Id stayed on top of Harry's head and pecked Harry's scalp affectionately. Ginny took out a quibbler given to her by her friend Luna. After an unknown amount of time, when they arrived at King's Cross Station, Harry suddenly realized something as he waved goodbye to Ron and Ginny. That was the black cat in Luna's hand as she greeted Ginny. The reason why they were caught by Filch that night was that familiar cat's meow. Ryan's pet, Fat Cat Jerry. Chapter 444. New variables to be inserted. Deep in the rock cave outside Smith Castle, Kate and Penelope were tiptoeing into the fairy cave sparkling with fairy lights. After passing through sculptures of magical creatures such as the Thunderbird, Phoenix, and Niffler, and passing by magnificent stalactites, a row of human-shaped stone statues appeared in front of them. Wraps the entire body. Some of the armor looks a bit like a wizard robe, with a ruby on the head. Some armor looks like two different things put together. Some armor even gives people the feeling of being an external shell growing along the human body, full of vague blood vessel-like things that make people feel a little uncomfortable at first glance. Chest, as if he was performing some magic gesture. The statue also looks to be the newest among the other statues, with a line of Arabic numerals engraved below it. 1992, the protagonist who invited them here, Ryan, was sitting on a gorgeous chair carved from white marble under the stone platform. Little brat, why are you so narcissistic that you put your statue in the innermost part of the cave and asked us to come and see it? Kate paced briskly, like a lively deer, jumping around the stone platform and looking up and down at the statue. 1992, 1991, 19,901,973. What do these numbers mean? Penelope asked about the numbers. What she was most curious about was why the number below Ryan's statue was 1992. Of all Ryan's memorable numbers, none of them matched. This is an experiment. Ryan waved his hand, and 19 newspapers emerged from the air and appeared in front of Kate and Penelope in order. How is that possible? Penelope exclaimed, covering her mouth. Merlin's beard. Kate was the same. When she was 7 years old, she developed a habit called information hunger. This made her collect gossip information everywhere throughout the day, and newspapers were one of them. She was certain that she had read every issue of the Daily Prophet since it began in 1983. And now, one unfamiliar report after another appeared in front of him. His team were conducting excavation work and discovered an ancient corpse wearing a petrified belt. After opening the coffin, the team was attacked and killed by an unknown life form called Kulga. Kate took a look. The statue, which was marked with the year 1973, looked exactly like the photo in the newspaper. It had an integrated armor covering it that was designed based on a stag beetle. Vincent Bowen? Isn't himself a famous dark wizard? And he just disappeared a few years ago. I've also seen these wizards under his command in Nocturne Alley. Kate touched her chin. The flaming red knight of Pluto's dragon died inexplicably in front of the mirror. The drawings he left behind before his death depict a figure like a medieval knight. And the story came to an abrupt end. Grey Devore? He was indeed a wizard from Devonshire, but he died a few years ago, and after his death, it was discovered that many bodies of missing muggles were hidden in his basement. Bottom of the stone platform with the number 1975 marked on it are exactly the same. Little brat, I've discovered that the wizards that appear in your newspapers are all dark wizards who died inexplicably in recent years. These statues of yours have appeared in newspapers in the corresponding years according to the numbers below them, but it's too outrageous. A weirdo who can control ghosts, the legendary king of vampires, a mad scientist who strayed into the wizarding world, a mysterious detective with two personalities, and a self-proclaimed world destroyer who appears every time with a new cameraman with a weird hairstyle. These stories are all confined to a small town, and the characters in the stories, like these stories, mysteriously disappeared within just 1 year. You mean the experiment, these forged newspapers, I suppose. You asked Penelope and me to come here to help you, right? I understand. In Muggle terms, this is called a social experiment. You want to see how many people will believe these ridiculous stories. You may have left some confusing relics at the places where these stories took place, Kate said confidently to Ryan after reading all the newspapers. Her little face was raised high, with her right index finger pointed at Ryan, as if she had seen through everything. Is there a possibility that these newspapers are real? Ryan said speechlessly. How is that possible? Penelope blurted out some social experiment. It's an experiment of time. I traveled to various small towns in the UK, using 1 year as a scale. In the past, I played the roles of those dead dark wizards and performed stories that were confined to the small towns and were short-lived. After I had thought about it thousands of times, I was sure that the stories would not affect the future. It turns out that I succeeded. Future, which is now. In the wizarding world, there are some weird and outrageous stories. Aren't there a lot of them on the Quibbler? As for the fact that your memories have not changed and you are not even aware of these things, it is all because of my protection. Under my protection, your memories have not changed. Ryan shrugged. So, you asked us to come here just to show off your experiment. As an old couple, Penelope felt that Ryan must be up to something. I just wanted to ask for your advice. Everything in these stories is true in a sense. You can choose the power backgrounds of other knights except for the 1992 Zio, Cronus, and promote them to the entire magic world, mirror world, game disease, nebula gas. Which one do you want to choose? Ryan said with a smile. Why was the name of Zio the only one changed? What kind of king of time is he called when time is stopped? Chapter 445. The Mirror World unfolds. The superior race of vampires, the Fang vampires? This is too dangerous. As a vampire hunter, I won't allow it. Nebula gas? An accidental creation of a self-deriving gaseous potion that can turn muggles into magical beings. I think it's still too early. The destroyer of the world? A wizard who lost his magical ability due to a curse and was transformed into a magical creature with the ultimate ability to manipulate space? This is not appropriate either. Mirror world? The foreign land born in the mirror is not very dangerous, and it might be the future territory of wizards. Kate, who was touching the statue directly with magic power under Ryan's guidance, muttered to herself because of the information in her mind. I listened to Kate. Penelope said to Ryan, who looked at her. So, you've made your decision. Ryan put his hand on Kate's head. Well, I've decided. Penelope and I will graduate next year, so it's better to be more stable. It's the mirror world. Kate, she acted a little dazed, as if she was drunk. This is because, even though she knew that Ryan was very powerful, even the most powerful wizard, she did not expect him to be so powerful. The information contained in those 20 statues really surprised Kate. Every power that Ryan calls a knight contains the power to change the world. Especially the power of Kamen Rider Cronus that was sealed and excluded by Ryan the Surface. It contains the wizard's true technology related to time. But these forces, and the creations derived from those forces, are confined to remote towns in Britain. and they themselves didn't realize it. Finally, it disappears as the story ends. It can be said that without Ryan's permission, these powers and creations will never be able to reappear in the world. Then, the mirror world unfolds. As Ryan spoke, time was divided. Every divided period of time in a basement in Devon, a mirror covered tightly with dirty linen suddenly trembled. A world that can only be created by the union of wizards from all over the world. Under the endless magic, the mirror world covering a small town called Axminster in Devon is expanding at an indescribable speed. Well, now the mirror world is no longer limited to Axminster. Door to the world in the mirror. It is a world that is the opposite of the real world and reflects the other side of human hearts. Ryan stretched. No one could have imagined what great and incredible things he had done in that period of time. That world, I mean the mirror beasts, which are the extinct magical creatures in the mirror. How do they survive? Do they really have to rely on the lives of living things in the real world like in the story? Penelope asked quickly. What's reflected in the mirror? Ryan didn't answer, but smiled strangely. The world? And us. Kate said tentatively. That's it. It already existed, or it existed when the first mirror was created. I just forged it and applied my color to it. At number 4, Privet Drive, in the upstairs room where Dudley kept all the toys and other things that didn't fit in his bedroom. Hedwig skillfully pushed the window open with her furry head, holding a dead mouse in her hand. Harry yawned and climbed out of bed with sleepy eyes. He naturally picked up the nylon cloth that fell on the ground and covered the mirror embedded in the wardrobe at the door. It had been so windy lately that even though Harry had slept with the window open, in the morning, it was closed. Every morning day, Harry would be awakened on time by Hedwig's cooing and the sound of opening the window. Harry expertly dodged Hedwig's pecks of affection and opened the window wider, developed a strange habit of covering up anything that could reflect light. Normally, Uncle Vernon and the others would have ridiculed him long ago. But, just like Harry no longer sleeps in the cupboard under the stairs, Harry estimated that he would never hear such sarcastic words again in his life. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia spent a whole day immersed in the joy of the magic that Dudley performed for them. Because the ban on young wizards in the Muggle world was lifted, Dudley, who had learned exquisite household magic from nowhere, showed it off in front of his parents all day long. With a wave of the magic wand, the oil, dirt and dust disappear his wand. Mayonnaise from the bottle in the cupboard emerged from the tip of his wand. With a wave of the magic wand, the jeans that had originally become baggy, because Dudley had become thinner, Uncle Vernon also started to lose weight for his son, and it was quite effective, were cut to fit. If Dudley were a witch, according to Mrs. Weasley, he would be a perfect candidate for marriage, because of his excellent domestic magic. All in all, because of Dudley, some of Harry's recent strange requests, mirrors in the house cannot be exposed, were also met by Uncle Vernon and others. If Harry hadn't heard Uncle Vernon once, Harry must be so inferior to Dudley's muscles now that he dares not look in the mirror. Aunt Petunia, look at his tiny body, he's as thin as his father. I don't understand why Lily chose that rude guy. I mean, Severus looks frail, but there are solid muscles underneath those black robes. Harry didn't listen to the rest of the conversation. Uncle Vernon was rarely angry, wondering why Aunt Petunia knew that Professor Snape had muscles. Although Aunt Petunia explained many times that she was discovered by Snape when she was reading Lily's letter, which led to physical conflict. But Uncle Vernon was clearly not so easily appeased. He hadn't told them about his upcoming engagement to Ginny. Dudley knew about this because of what Fred and George said on the train. But at Harry's request, Dudley still didn't reveal anything. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Euphemistic Retention. Ginny had confided to Ron what was going on in her mind after that little conflict with him in the corridor on the 4th floor. His aunt and uncle would reject her just as they had rejected his father. At the time, Harry just thought it was nonsense. Furthermore, he himself was not liked and excluded by the Dursleys. But, until I returned to this home, Harry realized that deep down, he also longed for the blessing. It was already June 6th, the day he was supposed to return to Sirius. He still said nothing. They just knew that he would go to his godfather's house until school started, just like last year. Harry changed his clothes mechanically, opened the door and walked downstairs. The sizzling sound and the aroma of grease made Harry realize that Dudley was up into Dudley's hands. Harry looked towards the living room and saw his Uncle Dursley, whose face had changed from round to angular, reading the newspaper, the Daily Mail delivered that morning. Perhaps because of exercise, his face no longer had an unhealthy purple hue. Uncle Vernon heard Harry's footsteps, as evidenced by the way he gave a sudden, awkward shift of his hips towards the TV. Also identify who the owner of the footsteps is. Harry couldn't help but have tears in his eyes. He finally realized from Uncle Vernon's tiny action that Uncle Vernon disliked him. The sound of a throat clearing came from behind Harry. Harry quickly moved aside. It's Aunt Petunia. Perhaps it was because of the intimacy with his mother that came from his heart, or even deep in his heart, that he didn't even notice Aunt Petunia. Harry actually guessed that the unconscious change in Dudley and Aunt Petunia's attitude might be related to the magic of love that Harry had truly mastered. As for Uncle Vernon, who is not actually related to Harry by blood, he just listens to his wife and loves his sons unconditionally, so it is understandable that he changes himself for them. Ignored by Uncle Vernon and with Aunt Petunia's stiff smile, Harry stepped over Aunt Petunia's favorite Persian carpet and sat on the sofa on the left. But Harry thought of one thing, that is, after developing the habit of fitness, Uncle Vernon, who had not eaten in the morning, had a slower reaction speed than usual. Half an Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia was much easier to deal with than a whole Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Dudley was here too. This might be a good opportunity to tell them that he was engaged. Sirius would pick him up before lunch today. No matter how violently Aunt Petunia reacted, he would be gone in a moment. Brains to prepare his speech. I'm getting engaged to Ginny, you know, the red-haired daughter of Mr. Weasley. No, shouldn't we introduce Ginny first? And Harry cleared his throat and prepared to speak. However, Dudley came in waving his wand, with plates of fried eggs, bacon, and sandwiches revolving around him like the earth around the sun. My little Dudley. You must be tired. Know where to put her hands. Yes, very manly. The Dursley man. I heard you joined Quidditch, right? And you're the ace of the team. Gold will always shine wherever it shines. Uncle Vernon looked Dudley up and down. He managed to find masculinity in Dudley, who looked like a good wife and mother. You know, Uncle Vernon has always believed that housework and cooking should be done by women. So even if he listened to Aunt Petunia, he never helped in this regard. Well, hello Harry. Dudley waved his wand again, and the plate slowly landed on the chestnut table in front of the sofa. And greeted Harry. Boy, do you know what Quidditch is? Haha. Just like football, it's a sport that only students who are good enough can join. Why don't you let Dudley teach you? Uncle Vernon raised his eyebrows and said to Harry with a smile. Dad, Harry is the captain of the Ravenclaw Quidditch team, and they are the winners of the Quidditch Cup. Dudley leaned close to Uncle Vernon and whispered. Uncle Vernon coughed and began to eat the fried eggs on the plate in front of him. He ate with great concentration, as if he had never eaten anything so delicious before. Our Dudley is so popular in school that his classmates use their connections to get a flu network opened for our family. Aunt Petunia pointed to a place that was supposed to be sealed off, where there should have been a fake coal-burning electric stove. But now there was a hole there, and the black ashes showed that it had actually been used when the weather was still cold. It's unbelievable that Aunt Petunia, who has a mysophobia, would install a fireplace in front of her beloved Persian carpet. So Harry was amazed. Aunt Petunia, who misunderstood Harry's expression, showed her long horse teeth proudly, would probably never mention Quidditch again. Harry finally understood why Dudley had looked so hateful before. Who is the most powerful British Prime Minister, like the Queen of England? Faced with Harry's silence, Aunt Petunia continued with a smile on her face. Dudley, sitting on the sofa opposite, gave Harry an apologetic look. So, Harry decided not to mention that his friend Draco's family once controlled a Minister of Magic, and Ron's father was the Minister of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, the powerful department of the Ministry of Magic. As Uncle Vernon grew more and more proud, Aunt Petunia continued to talk about all the influential classmates Dudley knew. They will also come here to play, via the Flu Network, during the summer vacation. Just when Harry was about to forget what he was going to say in the beginning, he suddenly remembered Ginny's analysis of Aunt Petunia. Chapter 447, Number 10 Rose Road. Harry said nothing until Sirius knocked on the door of Number 4, Privet Drive. Because he made an outrageous decision, letting his mother speak for him. This wasn't just Harry imagining things. In fact, Harry saw Ryan again in his dream after the year-end dinner series, for entertainment. But Harry clearly knew that this little bit of effort was much more than what Ryan had given him. All in all, this time, Ryan only said a few words to wake him up. What's even more outrageous is that when he woke up, it was already daybreak. You have to know that only 10 minutes passed in the dream. Harry shook his head and continued to recall the past as he packed his things into the bag given by Malfoy's father. The general meaning of what Ryan said was that since Penelope and Kate would be in 7th grade next semester, he didn't have time to play any development games with Harry anymore. So don't be surprised when Ryan installs something for him. And just now, when he realized the deeper meaning behind Aunt Petunia's harsh words, a virtual interface that only he was about to see appeared on his retina. The style of the painting was very similar to the role-playing computer games I had watched Dudley play before. Follow one boring task after another and experience the story written by the creator. Just now, the interface in front of Harry showed rows of tasks with exclamation marks. The last one is, the resurrection of Lily Evans. Click on it and you will see a detailed explanation of the task. You need to complete the pre-task and obtain the resurrection stone. I clicked it again, and a bunch of detailed text appeared. The above details the history and functions of the resurrection stone. And to resurrect her mother, what else was needed is light to illuminate her way back to reality from the afterlife. That was the magic of love left by her mother. However, this also means that his father, who was to be resurrected along with his mother, is no longer possible. Harry, are you ready? Lupin and Tonks are still waiting for us at home. Downstairs, Sirius' voice interrupted Harry's memories and thoughts. Harry picked up the bag, his eyes determined. The very first task on the retina is to constantly destroy the mirror surface and then repair it late at night. Harry had no idea what was hidden behind this task that seemed so confusing to him. But the magic of resurrection, which touches the realm of God's power, may have to go through these confusing tasks and involve areas that ordinary wizards and even Dumbledore cannot touch. Harry was keenly aware that this task might be related to the recent abnormality in the mirror. Right. Otherwise, why has there not been a single wizard recorded in the history of magic, or even rumored to have achieved true resurrection? Breaking the spell that Voldemort had cast to protect the resurrection stone would perhaps be the easiest step. Harry took a deep breath and looked back at number 4 Privet Drive, which seemed to be burning under the scorching sun. The next time he came back here, he wouldn't be alone. Harry shouldered his backpack, picked up Hedwig's cage and walked towards Sirius. Sirius was sitting in a green open car, waving at Harry. Harry didn't recognize this car, but from the change in Uncle Vernon's expression when he opened the door, he knew that this car must be very expensive. Harry almost thought that Uncle Vernon was also a squib who didn't know his own identity and had awakened the magic of metamorphmagus, a magic that can change one's own form, a magic that allows one to change one's appearance, hair color and other physical features at will. Otherwise, why would that expression be so surprised? It's like he had completely changed his face. Do you want to ask me why I drove here to pick you up? Sirius held the steering wheel with one hand and looked at Harry, revealing a lazy temperament. Even Ms. Winter, who lived at 11 Privet Drive and was very picky about men's appearance, couldn't help but wink at Sirius who was passing by. Yes. Harry nodded, pretending that he was really here because of the car. It's called a sports car. Sirius grinned. That idiot Dursley almost had his eyes on this sports car. My consulting fee was not in vain. This car called Aston Martin really made Dursley drop his joy. You came to see them with Lily. They thought you were a poor country boy. James, you are just too confident. Why don't you consult a muggle consultant like me and spend a little money to buy a sports car? Sirius rambled on, lost in his own memories again. He seemed to treat Harry like his father can or the rear of another car. The obstacle in front of them will suddenly jump away automatically. Before they knew it, they had arrived at another unfamiliar street. Harry used his unworldly perspective to read the words on the road sign as they flew by. Rose Road, Little Whinging, Surrey. Rosaceae Drive? It seems quite far from Privet Drive, Harry muttered. Privet means Ligustrum lucidum. According to the street naming rules, the rose family plants represented by Rosaceae belong to the later batch. Just as Harry was wondering why he was taken to such a remote street, the car slowed down. Sorry, I was distracted just now. Sirius, who didn't notice that he had just spoken, scratched his hair and drove to a fork in the road at the end of the street. As the car moved in, a white fog appeared around Harry and the others. 10 Rose Road, Little Whinging, Surrey. Sirius stopped the car next to a flower bed with a fountain and turned his head to say to Harry, "Where to stay?" Harry was a little incredulous, because what appeared before his eyes was a luxurious mansion as big as 2 football fields. The flower beds outside and the paths among the trees are all paved with polished marble. The fountains, each with a variety of magical creatures carved inside, continuously spray water droplets in all directions, forming rainbows. Beautiful butterflies with wings as white as jade dance among the flower beds and trees. The mansion surrounded by these beautiful scenery is naturally not simple. The entire mansion was decorated in a way that was not possible for Muggle craftsmen. It seems to be carved from a huge crystal pebble, as if it were a whole. Chapter 448. Harry was stunned. Ryan felt a little regretful. His favorite show in Mindworld, Harry Potter and the Harry Potter Adventures, which he, Kate and Penelope loved most, has been discontinued. Because the material is gone. But Ryan didn't want to break his promise, and also because of the material for the new show Harry Potter and the Resurrection Stone. Ryan reluctantly gave up the show for the new show a year later. However, this also means that the proportion of time originally spent watching TV will be added to his daily interactions with Kate and Penelope. Because they are going to graduate next year, Penelope and Kate found an excuse to tell their family that they want to travel together. So they stayed at Smith Castle this summer. This left Nagini has no time to transform into human form. Only Jerry and Dr. Hamsterfly will can be pets. And Ryan also had to occasionally accompany Fleur, who was excited about going to Hogwarts while his little Luna liked to go out and catch ballfish every day. And she caught nothing. This made Ryan, who is a master of time management and could do multi-threaded operations, feels tired. Fortunately, Hermione's family is quite strict, and she and her family are going to travel to France this summer. In the original world line, Hermione's skin turned wheat-colored due to the scorching sun in France because of this trip. However, this made Ryan a little hesitant as to whether he should ask Hermione to protect herself from the sun. Besides, Fleur's home is in Paris. If they meet and talk about their loved ones, Ryan coughed to wake himself up from his chaotic thoughts. He is in the bathroom now, but it is a rare moment of alone time, so he might as well look at something more interesting. Then, as Ryan looked, a luxurious mansion appeared. Wizarding World, who had been wrongfully imprinted for many years. What? Are you stunned? Sirius looked at Harry and smiled. How is that possible? Harry still couldn't believe it. When did the Wizarding World develop so fast? In the magic world, only cleaning agents, flying brooms, costumes, and comedy props have research teams, and various new products are constantly being launched. As for building houses, which can be accomplished by wizards through magic, there is almost no room for relevant research teams or even companies to survive. Poor wizards build houses directly with magic. They don't need to pay attention to the site geology, height difference, surrounding conditions, the orientation of the house, the spatial layout, and the structural form, because everything is supported by omnipotent magic. Rich wizards also buy or inherit a ready-made castle from their ancestors, and then inject magic into the places they need. Those who are richer, or have both money and free time, will even infuse magic into every brick and stone. Therefore, there is no such large construction company, as big as the Nimbus Racing Broom Company is to flying broomsticks, in the British Wizarding World. Not to mention that it is so professional that there is a composite material specifically for building mansions. You have to understand that ever since the Ministry of Magic allowed the magical transformation of Muggle items, the development of the British Wizarding World has been like riding a rocket. Be combined with magic to produce a chemical reaction. This newly established water construction company is just one of them. After getting the concept of composite materials from the Muggle world, it also exists in alchemy, but the concept was not specifically extracted. Stephen Water began to study all kinds of material formulas all day long. Relying on gold galleons and his own talents, he founded his own construction company with the support of Skywalker Alchemy Workshop. Sirius said in a sighing tone. In his era, he was one of the most rebellious and advanced wizards. After his injustice was cleared, he was still one of those wizards. But with recent developments, even Sirius felt that he was lagging behind the times. Stephen Water is an employee of Skywalker Alchemy Workshop. Harry became interested. He was already fascinated by everything Skywalker because of Doraemon and the magical props in the workshop. By the way, where will Luke Skywalker and his friends go in this year's Doraemon? Cosmic Broom Company. The founder of the Nimbus Racing Broom Company was also an employee of Cosmic Broom Company, Limited. He approached the boss of Cosmic Broom for investment and was laughed at for his wild ideas. In order to support Walter, Skywalker Alchemy Workshop specially used another composite material developed by Walter to renovate the store in Diagon Alley. It was like a house made of clouds or marshmallows, with the word Skywalker Alchemy Workshop written in shimmering metal in the center. "So how much did it cost you?" Harry asked casually. "Just 100,000 gold galleons, minus the decimals." 100,000 gold galleons, if we use Hogwarts professor, a high-tech profession in the British wizarding world, as an example, his weekly salary is 100 gold galleons. This is equivalent to Sirius saying that a Hogwarts professor would need nearly 10 years to save up the gold galleons that he would need if he lived and ate at Hogwarts without spending an extra penny maintained by yourself. "I've read the instructions, it's very simple, Harry." Sirius was stopped by Harry before he could finish his words. "What did you say?" "Me, this manor is." Harry's pupils dilated instantly. "Yes, don't you want to leave the Dursleys? And since you're getting engaged, I thought of giving it to you." Wrote the letter the night after the Quidditch match, on June 6th, and today is the 18th. "In just 12 days, you built a manor for me." Harry was stunned. Chapter 449 Passionate Tonks. Is it 12 days short? You know, the construction of the burrow only took Molly and the others one afternoon. Faced with Harry's question, Sirius just tilted his head in confusion. Magic is not an inconvenience. Can't we just use a magic wand to build a house? This is also why the Black family chose to hoard land instead of doing other businesses. Because for the rest, wizards can achieve it by just using the power of thinking. Even if it's land, to be honest, wizards can occupy the empty houses of wealthy muggles. A confusion charm would make this muggle tycoon subconsciously forget about this asset every time. Okay. Harry thought about it, and was no longer surprised that Ryan had reached the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle in an instant and transferred them back to Hogwarts from the moon. Then he pulled Sirius and pretended to walk towards the mansion. "Wait, didn't I tell you that Remus and Twinks are still waiting for me at home? And it's just a stopover." Sirius didn't move, but put on the same cynical smile Harry had seen in his parents' photo albums. "I'm going to be left here. Ginny wouldn't be here, would you? And Mr. Weasley want me to be alone with her here until the engagement?" Harry subconsciously thought of this possibility. Good idea, but unfortunately it is not. "I think you're familiar with this." Sirius waved his hand, directing Harry's attention to the pockets of his suit, which even Uncle Vernon could find no fault with. It was like if he took something out from inside. After he made sure that Harry was looking at his clenched hands that were facing upwards, he said, "Dang dang dang. Look what this is." Familiar. Although the answer was in his own mouth, he really couldn't remember anything. Sirius smirked and carefully placed it in front of them again, standing in the middle of the marble path and tapping it with his wand. Goo-doo goo-doo. The sound of oatmeal being overcooked with a lid on came from that little door. Before Harry could take a closer look, a 2-meter-high pink iron door appeared in its place. "It's getting bigger. Wait, this can't be really." Harry's face flushed with excitement, as if he had put on rouge. "Yes, it's a portable portal. It's incredible, isn't it? You can use the magic of enlargement and reduction while maintaining the original magic. If things continue like this, maybe I can fulfill my dream, shrinking number 12 Grimwald Place and traveling with James and the others." Sirius mentioned Harry's father, with inexplicable tears in his eyes again. "This is exactly the same as in Doraemon." Harry exclaimed briefly, then looked at Sirius. "So this is really the place to stay? We still have to go to Grimwald Place. I customized this especially for me." Sirius looked at the sleek and transparent mansion not far away. "It's not just a place to stay, but also the place where you and Ginny will hold your engagement party on the 21st. It's that big, that..." Harry started worry. "I know you don't like crowds. Apart from Molly and the others, the rest of the candidates will be decided by you and Ginny. Except for the fact that you don't want to leave the Dursleys, my other guesses are pretty correct." Sirius's expression at this moment made Harry feel a little sad for some reason. His godfather was trying to please him in an almost flattering manner. "Sirius, you've done well enough." Harry pursed his lips. "No, I don't think it's enough. Facing a family like the Dursleys, you're still willing to stay. This means that what I did was far from good enough." Sirius looked at the fountain beside him unnaturally either, but "You make me feel this way." Harry ran to the front of the fountain and looked straight at Sirius. "Okay, we should go." Sirius wiped his wet eyes, his ears slightly red. He quickly avoided Harry's sight and looked at the pink door where they had always placed play. He inserted the wand into the place where the keyhole should be, closed his eyes, and seemed to be mumbling something in his mind. Hall, lined with portraits of people, appeared in front of them. Lupin was standing arm in arm with a strange brown-haired woman. She must be Tonks. She is my relative, Nymphadora Tonks, said Sirius, pulling his wand out of the keyhole. The magic door seemed to have been exhausted. It shrank with a click and was put into Sirius' pocket to be called by her last name. Sirius shrugged. You'd be like that, too, if your idiotic mother had called you Nymphadora. And Tonks's brown hair suddenly turned bubblegum pink as she glared at Sirius. Harry suspected that if Lupin hadn't held her back, she would have drawn her wand and given Sirius a good whack. But even such a witch with a somewhat fierce personality regained her gentleness after Lupin held her back. It's like he's become a different. Tonks walked towards Harry, hugged him tightly, and whispered in Harry's ear, I really don't know how to thank you, Cupid, for me and Remus. She looked Harry up and down again, seeming to misunderstand his expression, surprised. I'm metamorphmagus. That is, I can change my appearance as I please. I was born that way. In Aurora training, I got top marks in concealment and disguise without having to study at all. I think that's probably why Mata asked me to join the Order of the Phoenix. Hello Harry, I haven't seen you for a few days. Lupin also came over, and Tonks leaned into his arms. There was no trace of the arrogance he had when he talked about his talent just now. Chapter 450, Pluto Dragon in the Mirror. Time passed quickly, and the next day came in a blink of an eye. But the mission last night, the mission that took place in the mirror world, still haunted Harry like a nightmare. Mood, Niffler, Irrumpant, Ashwinder. In Harry's room, Ron was waving his wand and chanting the names of magical creatures one after another. What are you doing? Harry had no choice but to lift the quilt and stick his head out. You didn't see it. On summoning spells and use their magic power to summon the forms of magical creatures that have signed a contract with them to fight. Harry, can you imagine? It describes many interesting magical creatures, even some extinct ones, such as the Plutosaurus. Because of this book, I heard that many students who did not choose the magical creatures course wrote to their dean, saying that they wanted to change it. Are you not very interested in these? Ron looked at Harry, who looked a little listless when the subject change was mentioned. He didn't notice at all that this was a change that had occurred since he mentioned the Pluto Dragon. The Plutosaurus is a magical creature contracted by a villain in this story, and Luke Skywalker, Nobita, and his friends defeated him. Can I also do it? Ron took out the latest version of Doraemon and chatted in front of Harry. Okay, so that means the Plutosaurus has been defeated. Then how was he defeated? Harry grabbed Ron's shoulders. That world reappeared in my memory. That world that is the opposite of everything in the outside world. There is another him inside, a left-handed one, whose bangs are also oddly tilted to the right, because of the lightning scar that has also been transferred to the right side of his forehead. The one he rode on the Pluto Dragon that emerged from the mirror in the mirror world and drove Harry out of that world. But after entering the mirror world, a new task appeared, to choose. Accept or reject another self, but this is also where I got stuck. This task is very important. It will allow the magic power in his heart to become stronger again, strong enough to illuminate the way to the afterlife through the resurrection stone. But that Pluto Dragon, the most powerful ancient dragon without any natural enemies, became an insurmountable chasm for him. However, it also appeared in the Doraemon comics and was defeated by Luke Skywalker, Nobita. Is this Momotaro's rice balls? Luke Skywalker, Nobita, relies on this, a magical prop that will make animals obey him after eating it. Ron turned the page, and an ordinary rice ball appeared in front of Harry, with the voice of Doraemon introduces the background story of the rice ball. That's it. Harry collapsed onto the sky blue pillow behind him. Harry, you're not anxious about your upcoming engagement. Even though Ron was slow to notice, he noticed something was wrong. Why? Do you think so? Harry stared at the eagle flying around on the bronze cloth above the bed and sighed helplessly. That's what Sirius and the others said. That's why I came to your place early. Ginny wanted to come too, but Bill stopped her. She said she was afraid you were doing it on purpose, trying to trick Ginny into coming over and doing things with her that we shouldn't do at our age while the adults were busy with other things. Ron looked a little annoyed. To be honest, after he came over, Harry still looked lifeless. It almost made him think that what Bill said was true. He knew that Harry was not as innocent as he seemed. Harry once said, while looking at a chart in astronomy class, Aurora Sinistra, I can't see one of them correctly. Can you let me see Uranus as well? Sinistra's face turned red with anger, but when he looked at Harry's seemingly innocent face, he did not lose his temper. But Ron didn't believe that. Harry is a top student, how could he make such a small mistake? This is also one of the reasons why he felt a little repulsive when Ginny and Harry were together. Bill? He has never met me, so it is normal for him to doubt me. Harry didn't care. The little wizards of their grade were a little curious about that matter. Like his roommate, Michael once got a book with alluring girls in it. They all had dark circles under their eyes during that period. Even Ron, Harry knew that he had secretly watched it with him. After all, pictures in the wizarding world move. If the book hadn't been in the Ravenclaw common room and accidentally disappeared, Neville, who really knows nothing, will have dark circles under his eyes. Harry himself probably couldn't help himself. Because the day before the book disappeared, Ron read the book for the first time, wanting to study how to add sound into it. Michael and his classmates, as well as some senior students, also joined the team. If it really succeeds, not only Harry, but all the male students in Ravenclaw will have dark circles under their eyes. Okay, but I think Bill is just like me. Before he became a cursebreaker, he gifted Ginny the most. Ron felt that Bill wouldn't let Harry off so easily. By the way, you seem to want to defeat Pluto Dragon. Ron asked again after he put aside his dissatisfaction with Harry. He noticed the doubts just now. I think I can tell you. Harry was pleasantly surprised to find that he could tell Ron everything about the mirror world. Not bound by any contract. To be honest, Harry was a little uncomfortable with it. Recently I've been feeling that something is watching me in mirrors and other things that can reflect the real world. Last night, I forgot to cover the floor-length mirror next to me. Then I entered another world. Another appeared to me. He could summon the Pluto Dragon in the mirror of that world, and I was driven back. If this problem is not resolved, I probably won't be able to look at the mirror again. I won't even be able to face the window, the lake, or Ginny's eyes anymore. Harry said half-truths to Ron worriedly thanks to my classmate who I met at the age of 20 for his monthly ticket and other classmates for their recommendations and subscriptions. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.